Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere warm, a little musty, and deeply unbothered by the pace of progress. You're not a soldier, a queen, or even a particularly useful servant. No, tonight you are a 17th century Dutch housecat. You wake up in a narrow brick home, nestled along one of those iconic canals in the heart of the Dutch Republic. There's a faint smell of salt herring and dried peat in the air. The shutters are only half open, letting in morning light that slices across the wooden floor like lazy gold. And you're curled in a loaf on a hand-stitched wool blanket, faded with age and ever so slightly itchy. Someone's probably moved it off the bed and onto a bench, but you don't care. You're stretched out like a furry little sausage, absorbing every molecule of warmth from a sunbeam that has conveniently decided you are the chosen one this morning. This is your world. Narrow staircases, clay tiles, old books that no one reads but everyone pretends to revere, a place where fish guts are a common breakfast smell, and Calvinism keeps everyone just grumpy enough to be interesting. You don't contribute much, but you do observe everything, and that, dear listener, is your true power. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Always fun to know who's dozing where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You twitch your ear. A bird caws far off, probably a gull. You sigh dramatically, stretch one back paw like an overworked poet, and blink into the golden haze. The humans are beginning to move about. You hear the clink of a pewter cup, a low mutter, the groaning creak of a wooden chair. But none of that is your problem. Your first decision of the day is whether to move to the windowsill or not. It's warmer, yes, but it lacks the cozy wool surface. Also, the window ledge is currently occupied by a ceramic jug that looks precariously placed. Knocking it off would be fun, but also someone might pick you up and move you, or worse, shoo you. You remain exactly where you are. Above you, tiny, dust motes float like lazy fairies. One lands on your whiskers. You twitch but make no move to catch it. That level of activity is for later, perhaps after your fifth nap. Outside, a man leads a barrow of beets past your door. The wheels squeak in a familiar, comforting way. You've timed your internal clock to it. Beat man. Then church bells. Then someone burns bread. It's not much, but it's yours. The room you're in is both too fancy and too uncomfortable. Like most middle-class Dutch households in this era, it's filled with uncomfortable chairs no one ever sits on, embroidered cushions that itch, and portraits of dead people who never blink. You know this because you've checked. At length. Every morning, just to be sure. One such portrait glares at you from the opposite wall, a stern man with a starched ruff and the eyes of someone who never once laughed in his life. You stare back. You always win this staring contest, mostly because you can blink slowly and smugly while he cannot blink at all. Historians still argue whether cats were considered full members of the household or merely tolerated mouse deterrents. Judging by your lifestyle, you'd argue for mildly venerated. After all, you sleep in the good room. You're allowed on the furniture, and no one has tried to drown you in a sack lately, which is always a win in this century. The blanket beneath you smells like lavender and boiled potatoes. It's perfect. From the hall, you hear footsteps, bare feet slapping against cool tile. The maid, she's humming some folk tune out of key and without much conviction. She's young, always smells faintly of yeast, and thinks you're a minor demon in fur. You like her. She gives you scraps. The door creaks open a little wider, and a shaft of light stretches toward you. You squint, offended. The maid passes, by carrying a sloshing basin of something vaguely soupy. She doesn't look your way, which is unacceptable. You let out one polite chirp, a gentle, inquisitive sound, the kind that says, "Excuse me, I'm awake now, and I'd like to be acknowledged." She pauses, rolls her eyes, and mutters something about lazy fluff. But she does bend down to scratch your head with one wet finger. Victory, as she moves on, You finally shift position. Rise, stretch. That cat stretch. The full back arch, tail curl, paws forward. It's less about exercise and more about showing off how good your spine is at things human spines are terrible at. Time to start the day then. You leap off the bench, gracefully, if a bit heavier than you were last winter, and land with a soft thud. You pause, lick your shoulder once, not because it's dirty, but because routines are important. You wander into the hallway. The floor is cold and your paws make no sound. The scent here is different. Coal smoke, damp stone, and something metallic that no one else seems to notice. Probably the key ring hanging by the door. You've sniffed it before. Not worth licking. Out in the kitchen, light spills through. A window where the glass warps the world into soft, wobbly shapes. The maid has opened a cupboard and is mumbling again. You approach, slowly, like a jungle predator made entirely of fluff and attitude. She's tearing a chunk off a dried eel. She doesn't see you yet. You issue a soft trill. This time, she startles. "Oh, you..." Again. She tosses the bit of eel in your general direction. It lands on the stone floor with an unceremonious flap. You sniff. It smells like yesterday's low tide. Perfect. You eat, with slow, dignified crunches, pretending not to hear her muttering about useless freeloaders. The eel is rubbery, but satisfying. Once finished, you sit back on your haunches, lick a paw, and drag it over your face in an extremely delicate performance of cleanliness. This takes several minutes and includes one baffling pause halfway through, to stare into space. You don't explain yourself. You never do. The house is fully awake now. Someone is lighting the fire in the hearth. The old man is shuffling about, clearing his throat like he invented phlegm. The child upstairs is already trying to sing, bless her off-key soul. You have survived another morning. And now, you hear the creak of a stair. The child is coming. You consider hiding. But no, you are brave. You hold your ground on the cold kitchen tile, licking the last trace of eel from your whiskers with deliberate slowness. A shadow flits across the doorway. Then, there she is. The shoemaker's daughter. Approximately 6 years old. Built like a breadstick dipped in molasses and in possession of an enthusiasm so chaotic it could topple empires. She gasps with joy. "There you are!" You blink. Slowly. Not because you're particularly relaxed, but because the sheer volume of her voice requires some form of emotional buffer. Her feet slap against the floor as she charges forward, arms wide like she's greeting a long-lost sailor. You make a split-second decision. Run? No. Too much effort. Hiss. Too early in the day. Accept your fate? Yes. Like the soft, furry martyr you are. She scoops you up in what she imagines is a gentle embrace and what you would legally classify as a stranglehold. Her hands are sticky, always sticky. Today's flavour is plum jam, probably stolen off the breakfast table. You are now lightly sugar-coated. She announces, "You're a prince today," and hauls you toward the parlour. You'd protest, but your back legs are dangling and your dignity's already in ruins. You flop against her shoulder like a warm scarf filled with betrayal. Historians still argue whether cats in early modern Europe were truly seen as domestic companions or merely tolerated mousers. However, there's decent evidence that children, at least, saw you as the ultimate toy/confidant/victim. In the parlour, she plops you onto a low stool and pulls out her doll's wardrobe. You see it before she does. A tiny linen cap, too small even for your ears. A crimson sash that may once have belonged to a curtain tie. And no, not that. Anything but that. The lace ruff. You attempt escape, but she's faster today. She's got practice. She tugs the little outfit over your head with the determination of someone used to wrestling flour sacks and small cousins. You go limp. This is your best defense now. Extreme passivity. Perfect, she coos, stepping back to admire you. Now you're Lord Snugglefur, Prince of Mice. You feel a part of your soul leave your body. The child skips around the room, humming tunelessly and mumbling about royal processions and unicorn battles. You sit perfectly still, dressed like a damp courtier, internally reciting all the sins you've witnessed in this house. One day, you'll write a tell-all. Eventually, she tries to sit you in a toy cradle. That is your limit. With one fluid motion, you vault from the stool, the ruff flying off like a liberated parasail. You skitter across the tile and vanish into the nearest hiding place, the narrow space between a cupboard and the wall. Safe. From your hideout, you watch her peer around the room, calling your name in increasingly theatrical tones. Prince of Mice, my lord, where are you? You don't answer. You are in mourning for your lost autonomy. A servant appears, broom in hand. She spots the discarded costume and sighs. Again? The girl shrugs and begins singing a ballad about your noble disappearance. You, still coated in invisible jam residue, resign yourself to remaining here until morale improves. Eventually, the girl gets distracted by a beetle crawling across the floor. She screams in delighted terror and chases it out of the room with a wooden spoon. You are blessedly forgotten. Cautiously, you slink out of your hiding place. You're dusty, possibly humiliated, but free. You pad back toward the main hall, where the light has shifted into that soft, hazy mid-morning glow. Somewhere upstairs, someone is tuning a lute badly. Downstairs, someone else sneezes with the weight of centuries. The parlor looms behind you. You glance back at it. The little lace ruff lies on the stool, crumpled and lifeless. You're not going back in there. Instead, you slip into the adjacent drawing room. This room is rarely used. Too cold, too formal. But it's got one thing you like, a particularly strange painting. It hangs over the fireplace, tall, rectangular, unsmiling. A man in black, wearing a collar stiff enough to cut cheese, stares out from it with such concentrated disdain, you wonder if he can smell you through time. You settle on the rug beneath the painting and meet his gaze. Your ears flick. The man's eyes are small, pinched, and unnervingly focused. This is your new opponent. You lie there, staring back. An entire staring match unfolds. Slow, silent, epic. You blink. He doesn't. You shift your tail. He still doesn't. You yawn, revealing a delicate pink tongue and two slightly crooked teeth. He remains unfazed. There are theories about cats, relationships with art. One scholar even wrote that animals in early Dutch households were sometimes used as symbolic references. Cats for lust, dogs for loyalty, birds for the soul. You personally feel that cats should be used to symbolize deep ambivalence and a refusal to commit to social norms. The man in the portrait would disagree. You stand, stretch again, and jump up onto the table beneath the painting. It's cluttered with pewter candle holders and something carved from ivory. You sniff each item with scholarly interest. Nothing edible. You leave a single hair as tax. Then, as if to prove your superiority, you yawn at the painting one last time and hop down. Your victory feels spiritual, if not visible. As you wander out of the drawing room, the front door opens with a long creak. Cold air rushes in, wet and mossy, with hints of river sludge. Someone stomps their boots, probably the butcher's assistant delivering tripe, which the family says is for stew, but which you strongly suspect no one eats on purpose. You skitter up the stairs, feeling energized. Somewhere, a clock chimes 11. You take that as a cue. Time for your second nap. You locate a sunbeam in the upstairs hallway, thinner than the morning's, but still respectable. It lands across a rug woven in blue and ochre, with one thread pulled loose like a tiny tail. You knead it for several seconds before settling in a crescent-shaped loaf. Below, the child is now humming again. You hear the sound of spoons clinking, water boiling, a distant chicken making its daily objection to existence. You sigh. As your eyes begin to droop, the portrait man's expression drifts into your memory. Again. You imagine he's furious about being upstaged by a fluffy, purring aristocrat with no job and no pants. You drift off, one ear twitching at a fly that doesn't dare land. The sunbeam fades an inch or two, which your body registers long before your brain does. You shift slightly, paws tucked tighter under your chest, nose buried in fur still faintly scented with plum jam. There's a moment, just a moment, when you're neither asleep nor awake, suspended, hovering in the comfortable fog that humans spend their whole lives trying to recreate with tea and linen sprays. Then, a soft creak. You open one eye, slow as molasses in January. A footstep, not heavy, measured, predictable, rhythmic, and scented with linseed oil, warm tobacco, and ink. The master of the house is home. You stretch, arching your back with a delicacy rivaled only by harpists and contortionists. Your claws extend, catching on the loose thread in the rug and pulling it a few inches further toward unraveling. Perfect. Downstairs, you hear the front door close with that slow, ceremonial thunk that Dutch oak is famous for. Footsteps pause, cloak hung up, gloves removed, a chair scoots back. The man of the house, your human of preference. He is neither particularly fond of cats, nor particularly irritated by them, which in your world counts as love. He's a tradesman, something in spices and dried goods, and like many upwardly mobile merchants in 17th century Amsterdam, he reads. A lot. Latin texts, ledgers. The occasional scandalous poem folded between a ledger and a letter from his cousin in Delft. His glasses are perpetually smudged. You rise from your nap like a deity returning from slumber. A yawn, a blink, a quick shake that sends a miniature cloud of fur motes into the sunlight. Then you pad silently down the hallway and pause at the top of the stairs. There he is, already, seated at his desk in the study. His hat is off. His expression is neutral, bordering on weary. One hand rests on a sealed letter. The other clutches a half-eaten apple that he clearly forgot was in his hand. You descend the stairs like a whisper wrapped in velvet. He doesn't look up. He never does. You glide past the table legs and chairs until you reach his feet. Then, with the confidence of someone who has claimed many laps before, you spring up onto the desk and land squarely on the ledger. He pauses, sighs lightly through his nose, and shifts his arm so as not to knock over the ink pot. You look at him. He looks at you. Nothing is said. Nothing needs to be. You curl up neatly on the warm paper. It's worth noting that many Dutch households in the Golden Age tolerated cats on desks, especially if they helped deter mice from feasting on stored papers and bookbindings. One traveller's account even refers to a merchant who claimed his cat was a devil to ledgers, but a saint to the grain sacks. You purr, loudly, not because you're trying to be cute, but because this is your preferred ambient noise. It's your version of soft jazz. The man finally shifts you, not off the desk, but to a stack of sealed letters. You accept this minor demotion with a theatrical sigh and knead the parchment until it's acceptably rumpled. Outside, the canal is silver under a slowly rolling sky. Ice is beginning to crust at the edges. Somewhere, a fishmonger bellows about eels. You ignore it. You have bigger concerns, namely, a rogue feather quill that twitches near the edge of the desk. You pounce. You miss. You pretend it was on purpose. The man gives you a side glance and mutters something about idle pause. You blink back at him. Slowly. The universal feline message. I could destroy your livelihood if I felt like it. But I won't. Not today. He leans over to scratch behind your ears, absently, like someone who's memorized this ritual, but doesn't know when or why it started. You allow it. For 3 seconds. Then you bite the air near his thumb. Not to hurt. Just to remind, he chuckles, very quietly. You've won this round. Historians still argue whether cats in the Dutch Republic were seen as symbols of independence, laziness, or economic good luck. But the artwork of the time tells its own story. Domestic scenes, full of curling tails, stretched paws, and sleepy eyes, near hearths and harpsichords. You are art. You always have been. Eventually, he stands, brushing crumbs from his waistcoat, and heads toward the kitchen. You follow, not out of loyalty, but because he walks like someone who might accidentally drop cheese. This has happened, more than once. In the kitchen, the cook is humming a hymn under her breath, chopping onions with a ferocity usually reserved for invaders. A pot simmers on the stove. The smell is sharp, cabbage and salt, and something possibly pickled. You choose a safer perch, the windowsill. The glass here is warped, old, and full of air bubbles. Looking through it makes the canal look like it's breathing. The ice is thicker now. You wonder, not for the first time, how cold is too cold to chase a duck. The answer is always colder than this. From here, you can also see the neighbor's cat, an orange bruiser with a missing chunk of ear and a permanent squint. He sits on a barge like he owns it. You pretend not to see him. Inside, the cook has dropped something. A carrot rolls your way. You sniff it, reject it. The man returns with a handful of dried cod and breaks off a piece for you. Victory. You eat it slowly, chewing each flake with the smug deliberation of a noble at feast. The cook says, "You'll spoil him." The man replies, "Too late." You purr so loudly the windows shiver. Then, just as your tail curls in satisfaction, the child reappears. She's holding something. You can smell it before you see. It, paint, oil paint. "Can I paint him?" she asks, already reaching. You bolt. You shoot around the corner and under the hallway bench in one fluid motion, your tail a streak of indignation. No way. Not today. You've endured plum jam. You've tolerated the lace ruff. But oil paints. That's where you draw the line. You crouch in the shadows, ears twitching, watching her little shoes scuff across the floor. She's scanning the hallway like a miniature hunter. "Kitty, come back. You're going to be so beautiful in blue." Your eyes narrow. Blue? You've seen what she did to her doll's face last week. It still looks like it's weeping cobalt. Tears. You will not suffer the same fate. She marches off to look under the stairwell. You take this chance to slink deeper into the gloom, eventually arriving in your sanctuary. The storage room. This room is blissfully ignored by nearly everyone. It smells like mildew, potatoes, and history. The walls are lined with crates and barrels. Old chairs gather dust in corners like shy ghosts. Light filters in through a tiny round window that mostly serves to magnify spiders. You leap gracefully onto a chest and knead the lid. It's not soft, but it's solid, and you trust it. More importantly, it smells like dried herbs and something vaguely fish-adjacent. You settle into a loaf shape and listen. Muffled voices echo from deeper in the house, someone speaking Dutch, then a bit of French. The merchant must be meeting a client. This could take hours. Perfect nap window. You close your eyes. The dust tickles your whiskers. The air hums with stillness. Then, squeak. Your ears twitch. Your eyes open. You don't move. You know this game. Another squeak. It's coming from the far corner. Behind a crate of salted herring. You remain, statue still, your body perfectly poised. The thrill of the hunt tingles across your fur like a static charge. A tiny brown shape darts out, paws, then disappears again. You wait. It returns, edging toward a crumb. You pounce. Chaos ensues. The crate wobbles, dust fills the air, and your prey vanishes behind a broomstick. You swipe once, miss. The mouse darts for the doorway. You follow. You are vengeance. You are grace. You are deeply determined and moderately overfed. Down the hallway you go, paws whispering over the wooden floorboards, past the kitchen, past the parlor. The mouse turns sharply under the tapestry near the back stairs. You follow it straight into the laundry room and crash directly into a stack of linen sheets. You emerge tangled, draped like a ghost at a carnival, your ears flicking in mild embarrassment. The mouse is long gone. You hiss at the wall for form's sake. Above you, laundry lines sway gently with half-dried shirts. One drops a bead of water onto your nose. You sneeze. The laundry maid walks in, sees you mid-sheet escape, and mutters, "Again?" You offer no explanation. Instead, you shake off the linens and saunter past her as if nothing had happened. You keep your tail high. Dignity must be performed, even if you've just tripped over a chemise. Historians still argue whether domestic cats actively hunted pests in these homes, or were more symbolic presences. But find a Dutch painting with a cat in it, and there's usually some implication of chaos. Knocked over jugs, startled birds, or cheese mysteriously missing. You return to the hallway and flop dramatically in front of the hearth, directly on the stone. It's cool. It's quiet. It smells like burned oak and smuggled tobacco. A boy enters, apprentice to the merchant. Maybe 12 years old, maybe 16. It's hard to tell. He has the haunted look of someone who's memorized the price of 5 kinds of pepper. He sits cross-legged by the fire, unwraps a heel of bread, and breaks off a bit for you without making eye contact. A peace offering. You accept it and chew loudly. The boy leans against the wall, eyes unfocused. You wonder what he's thinking about. Probably numbers. Possibly escape. You shift onto your side, exposing the full splendor of your belly, daring him to resist. He reaches over to scratch your stomach and, bam, you trap his hand with your paws. He laughs, carefully. You let him go, for now. It's moments like these that make you wonder if you've accidentally joined a very slow-moving theatre troupe. Outside, a bell rings somewhere. Church, perhaps. Or the pickle seller, who seems to ring a bell for emotional support more than commerce. The boy stands and leaves. You remain, stretched out like royalty. The fire has burned low. You blink. Your tail flicks. You are once again ready for nap number 3. You settle in, watching the flickering light play across the floorboards. Your breath slows. The household hums around you. Low conversation, the rattle of firewood, the distant slap of laundry. The mouse might return. The child might return. But for now, you sleep. A thin golden sliver cuts across your face, rousing you from the kind of nap philosophers dream about. You blink, lazy and disoriented. The sun has shifted again, sneaking down through the narrow window panes, illuminating dust motes in thick, slow spirals. It's the kind of light that makes everything look holy, even laundry. You stretch with an audible grunt, like an old man rising from his favorite chair, and roll onto your back. For a second, your legs flail inelegantly in the air before flopping, to the side with a dignity-defying thump. You blink at the ceiling. No need to rush. You've earned this life of leisure. Then, from the distance, clink, clink, shuffle. You know that sound. It's the maid setting the table. With the slow grace of a sun-warmed aristocrat, you saunter back through the hallway and peek around the corner of the dining room arch. The maid doesn't see you yet. She's arranging pewter spoons and folding napkins in what must be an official family folding technique, somewhere between a swan and a modest vegetable. You leap onto a side table, not silently, but with just enough grace that it feels intentional. She looks over. "Not on the cloth," she says, in the sing-song tone reserved for toddlers and small animals. You blink at her, jump down, and immediately leap onto a chair instead. Progress. The dining table is long and polished, a little too polished. You consider attempting to skate down its center, but you remember the time you slid into the candlesticks and almost burned your tail. Lesson learned. Probably. The maid finishes setting out the last fork and leaves the room humming something about St. Nicholas. The coast is clear. You hop up onto the table, gingerly, one paw at a time. Your claws retract to avoid scratching it. You know better. And at the center of the table, just as you hoped, sits the prize. A cold platter of smoked eel. This, you understand, is bait. It's not for you. It's meant for some guest. Possibly the neighbor who smells like cloves and old coins. Possibly someone new. But the eel is here. And you are here. The math is obvious. You lean forward. Sniff. Eel is strong. Slick. The sort of food that announces itself before it's even unwrapped. The Dutch love it. Travelers have written about it. One claimed that Amsterdammers would eat eel for breakfast, supper, weddings, and mourning. Your tongue flicks out just as the child re-enters, triumphant and paint-stained. "Gotcha!" she cries, brandishing a crude paintbrush. You bolt. Again. This time, you duck into the music room, a place you generally avoid because of the risk of harp incidents. But today, the harp is silent, and the chair cushions are perfectly aligned in a sunbeam. Tempting, you leap onto one. There's a faint whiff of wax and lavender oil. The merchant's wife must have been here recently. She sings sometimes, off-key but earnestly. She's the only person in the house who calls you dear thing, in a tone that isn't sarcastic. On the music stand sits a sheet of handwritten notation, Dutch hymnals maybe, or some French love song disguised as culture. You pat at the pages, sending one fluttering to the floor. In the corner sits a virginal, a smaller, more polite cousin of the harpsichord. Its keys are yellowed, its lid painted with a scene of improbable angels making poor decisions on a cloud. You hop up on it, sit, consider. With one paw, you tap a key, plink. You tilt your head, not unpleasant. You try again, plink plonk. You walk across it, producing a musical scale so mediocre it could only be feline in origin. Someone in the hallway murmurs something about cursed music and walks away. You sit tall, regal, victorious. You are a composer now. Historians still argue whether household pets disrupted domestic music making in meaningful ways, or whether they were simply charming background creatures. At least one letter from a Harlem lady mentions a cat with excellent timing, but only in the key of alarm. Your concert complete, you hop down and explore behind the music stand. There's a basket there, full of yarn. Now this is more your speed. You need it. It gives. You circle. It shifts. You curl up and bury your face in the wool. It smells like lanolin, dust, and accidental contentment. You drift again. Outside, hooves clatter down the street. A carriage rolls past. Inside, someone is probably talking about sugar imports or lace patterns. You don't care. You have yarn. But your peace is short-lived. Somewhere upstairs, a knock, a pause, a voice. "Sir, your guest has arrived." Your ears flick. This matters, because when guests come, leftovers follow. You leap from the basket and dart for the front hall, passing under a sideboard and between two boots, arriving just as the door creaks open. The guest is tall, smells like leather and nutmeg. A hat is removed, bows exchanged. You sit nearby, tail curled around your paws, the very picture of dignified welcome. He doesn't notice you, yet, but he will. They always do. You trail behind the grown-ups like a furry diplomat, far enough to feign disinterest, but close enough to monitor for potential snack drops. The guest speaks in a low voice, educated, carefully measured. He wears shoes with absurdly high heels and a doublet that rustles like parchment every time he shifts. Clearly someone who values aesthetics over comfort. An ideal target. They enter the drawing room, the fanciest chamber in the house, used exclusively for visitors, and, once, a family portrait that made the child cry for 3 days straight. You slip in after them. The drawing room is immaculate. Polished walnut panels, tapestries that depict Greek tragedies with suspiciously Dutch-looking faces. A globe sits in the corner, far too large and far too inaccurate. You're quite sure Terra Australis is mostly guesswork. One of the chairs still smells like candle smoke and cinnamon. A visiting relative must have sat there recently. She tried to pet you sideways. You've never fully recovered. You hop lightly onto the wide windowsill, pretending to gaze at the canal while secretly surveilling the tea tray. There's a plate of almond biscuits. Crumbs are inevitable. The merchant gestures at a chair for his guest, who removes his gloves with theatrical slowness. He then produces a velvet pouch and spills its contents onto the table. Tiny carved figurines. One appears to be a monkey wearing a ruff. Another might be a saint, or a turnip with ambition. You blink at them. The guest launches into a story. Something about Batavia and narrow escapes and spices worth more than gold. The merchant nods, polite but cautious. You've seen this routine before. Someone's here to impress, possibly to sell. You slink around the edge of the room toward the biscuits. As the guest shifts in his seat, a crumb drops to the carpet. You pounce with the speed of someone who has, historically, not been allowed near almond flour. You chew triumphantly under the harpsichord. It tastes faintly of cloves, success, and flaw. Historians agree that Dutch Golden Age drawing rooms were status showcases, spaces to display wealth, refinement, and a mild allergy to children. Cats were often depicted in these scenes as symbols of domestic coziness or, alternatively, minor chaos agents. Your current performance leans towards the latter. Above you, the conversation drifts towards shipping routes. The merchant's voice tightens. The guest speaks breezily of delays near the Cape and pirates who were more flamboyant than dangerous. He chuckles at his own joke. No one else does. You retreat to the hearth and sprawl dramatically. You lick your paw, partly out of pride, partly because there's still biscuit stuck to it. The fire crackles softly. The room smells like beeswax polish and old wood and a hint of tension. You let it wash over you. Eventually, the guest stands, ready to leave. You trail behind like a sommelier of exits, observing the bowing, the hat doffing, the ritual exchange of "we must do this again soon," which everyone knows is a polite lie. At the door, the guest finally notices you. He bends slowly. Ah, and who's this little rascal? You squint at him. He smells of travel, ink, and disappointment. You allow a single pet on the head, no more. Let him think he's special. As he leaves, the merchant mutters something under his breath. You can't quite make it out, but it contains the word tulip. Enough said. You saunter back toward the drawing room and find the child has returned, this time wielding a paper crown and a spoon. "Sir Meowlington," she declares, "you've been summoned to court." You flee. This time you climb the stairs 2 at a time, no small feat for someone with paws the size of antique buttons, and dash into the small upstairs parlour. It's unoccupied, dimly lit, and smells faintly of wax seals and unsent letters. In the corner stands the family cabinet of curiosities, a thing of wonder and barely organised clutter. You leap onto the base and peer in. Tiny shells from distant shores, dried beetles in ornate cases, a glass eye, unnervingly realistic, a mummified frog wearing what might be a doll's vest. You stare at it. It stares back. The staring contest ends in a draw. The Dutch were pioneers of the Wunderkammer, cabinets filled with wonders natural and man-made, intended to display both the owner's wealth and intellectual appetite. The line between science and whimsy was often thin. You once knocked over a fossilized rat tooth and nobody noticed for a week. You curl up beside the cabinet. It radiates stories, secrets, and the quiet arrogance of people who label seaweed as rare flora. The sun through the upper window slices across your fur in soft bands. You yawn, wide enough to terrify a grasshopper. Outside, boats pass. In the canal, a boy sells waffles. Somewhere, a dog barks at a goose, and the goose remains deeply unimpressed. Your tail flicks once, twice. You dream of almond crumbs. Downstairs, the merchant begins dictating a letter to his apprentice, who writes with the pained expression of someone who suspects he will soon be blamed for a shipping delay in Java. You, meanwhile, are upstairs, enjoying the deeply satisfying chaos of having escaped the child again. You tuck yourself behind a tasseled curtain, your secret nook. The fabric smells like lavender sachets and dust and faintly of moth. From here, you peer through the wavy, imperfect glass of a leaded window. Outside, the rooftops of Amsterdam slope gently in orderly rows. Chimneys puff faint wisps of smoke into the air. A laundry line stretches from one gabled house to another, underpants flapping proudly like flags in a peculiar domestic war. You blink slowly. A pigeon lands on the windowsill just outside. It looks at you. You look at it, and you both agree. Through. An unspoken, ancient contract to do absolutely nothing. Down the street, a cheese seller calls out his wares. The smell drifts up, sour and rich. You aren't particularly fond of cheese, but you are fond of cheese crumbs, and the two are cousins. You retreat from the window and head into the upstairs sitting room, which the family only uses when there are enough guests to pretend that having multiple parlours is necessary. Today it is quiet, except for the sound of a clock ticking. One of those delicate brass things with a tiny painted moon that never quite matches the real one. You hop onto the armrest of a velvet chair and then settle into its seat. The cushion sinks slightly, with that agreeable squish that humans chase in mattresses and never quite find. On a nearby side table sits a book left open, a volume on classical architecture, illustrated with columns and capitals and facades that resemble very serious faces. You step onto it casually. The pages shift beneath your paws. Historians still argue whether cats in 17th century Dutch homes were actively discouraged from treading on books, or if their presence was considered a sort of genteel defiance of order. At least one painting by Peter de Hooch shows a cat boldly, positioned next to a scholar's desk, suggesting a quiet rebellion was tolerated, if fur-covered. You bat at the corner of the page. It flutters up and folds oddly. You decide you've improved it. Then, footsteps. You freeze, ready to be scolded or scooped. But it's just the merchant's wife, slipping into the room with a faint rustle of skirts. She's carrying her embroidery hoop and a cushion under one arm. She sees you, smiles faintly, and, miracle of miracles, sits down without moving you. She begins to stitch, her needle dipping in and out of fabric in a gentle rhythm, like a gull skimming water. The thread is green, delicate, and so fine that it looks like grass bending in wind. You settle deeper into the cushion. The room smells now of her perfume, something with orange blossom and wax. It's the smell of letters sealed with care and carefully chosen ribbons. She hums as she works. You doze, and then a twitch. Not yours. Hers. She's reached for her cup of tea, but the saucer has tipped slightly, and a drop of tea spills onto her embroidery. She gasps, a soft, ladylike tragedy, and you bolt upright in solidarity. She frowns at the stain, dabs it with a cloth, and mutters something about always during the green thread. You hop onto her lap, offer your most neutral stare, and curl yourself into a ball, a peace offering. She laughs barely. There, at least you don't spill things. That is not strictly true, but you accept the compliment. As she returns to her work, you think about the rhythms of her days. So many hours spent stitching tiny flowers that never need watering. It's oddly admirable. Human patience, while usually flawed, can sometimes be soothing. Her stitch work is destined to become part of a cushion or perhaps an elaborate fire screen, or maybe it will be framed and hung near the entryway, where guests will admire it and try not to squint too obviously. The merchant's wife pauses and looks out the window, her fingers still, her eyes distant. Perhaps she's thinking about the next market day, or the neighbour with the loud laugh, or the time someone confused her embroidery for her maids. You nuzzle her hand just once. She doesn't flinch. She just keeps stitching. Elsewhere in the house, someone drops a pewter plate. No one reacts. That's how common such noises have become in a household of constant motion. You stretch, then slink down from her lap and hop up onto the windowsill again. The pigeon is gone now, replaced by a pair of sparrows arguing about a crumb. Outside, the canal shimmers like oilcloth in the sun. A barge slowly drifts past, low and wide, piled with barrels. Perhaps grain, perhaps salted fish, perhaps tulip. Bulbs for someone who thinks they're investing in the future. You groom your paw lazily, watching a child drag a wooden toy along the street. It's shaped like a horse, but behaves more like a wheelbarrow. She's not impressed with it. Her mother is bargaining with a flower seller, holding up tulips like they're medical specimens. A sudden gust of wind rattles the glass. You look up, mildly alarmed, but the merchant's wife just keeps stitching. You're safe, for now. You settle into your most distinguished pose. a tail curled neatly around your paws, back arched in quiet superiority. The room feels particularly peaceful, almost too serene for the usual bustling activity. The merchant's wife stitches steadily, a rhythmic, comforting sound, while outside the weather does its usual indecisive dance between rain and sunshine. The door creaks open, and the maid enters with an awkward grace, her hands laden with towels and the unmistakable scent of laundry. She pauses at the threshold, eyes flicking between you and the embroidered cushion now taking shape under the wife's hands. "Everything's in order, madam," she reports, in a voice that is more monotone than necessary. The merchant's wife gives a soft hum, acknowledging the maid's presence, but clearly too absorbed in her craft to engage in conversation. This is your moment. You wait until the maid's gaze is distracted by a plate of fruit on the side table. She looks at the apples, then back at the embroidery. You give yourself a little time, stretching and blinking innocently. Then, with the quietest of leaps, you dart for the pile of freshly laundered towels. The scent of soap, mixed with a touch of lavender, fills your senses as you dive into the stack, the soft fabric wrapping around you like a cloud. It's too luxurious to resist. You burrow into the warmth of the towels, feeling the slight roughness of the cotton against your fur, and allow yourself a small, secretive purr. The maid glances back at the pile, notices your movement, and narrows her eyes, but decides to let it slide, at least for now. You are a cat after all, and surely nothing more dangerous than that. The merchant's wife continues to hum, stitching. Quietly. The maid busies herself by folding an impressive tower of laundry, occasionally casting you a wary glance, knowing full well that she will find stray threads or paw prints on the fabrics later. But for now, everything is peaceful. The only sounds are the occasional rustle of towels and the soft thwip-thwip of the needle threading through fabric. You remain motionless, except for the flick of your tail, which betrays your relaxation. You've earned this. Outside, the world continues its symphony. A dog barks at something. A cart rumbles by on cobblestone streets. And somewhere, in the distant town square, the bell tolls the hour. But none of it matters. Not to you. You're in the perfect spot. Warm, cozy, and utterly unbothered by the world's bustling pace. Historians still argue over the level of comfort early modern cats achieved in the homes of the wealthy. While some documents suggest these households were strictly utilitarian, others reveal a surprising amount of pampering. One account from Amsterdam mentions a cat being placed on a velvet cushion as a guest of honor at a dinner party. Whether or not this was purely symbolic, historians are still divided. Your tail flicks again. You stare at the embroidery, watching the needle glide in and out. Your attention shifts for a moment, but you return to the towels, grateful for their warmth. The maid seems to lose interest in you for now, the corners of her mouth twitching slightly, as if she's willing to allow you this one small indulgence. Meanwhile, upstairs, the family prepares for their next ritual, dinner. You are aware of this without hearing a word. The subtle shifts in footfalls, the rustle of plates, the kitchen smells, roasted meats, bread rising, and that underlying scent of something sweet. You're not invited to dinner, of course. You never are. But there will be leftovers. There always are. You shift slightly on your towel mound, half dozing, keeping one ear half pricked. You know the signs. A family meal is about to be served, and your food instinct is a finely tuned radar, refined over generations of luxury. You slide slowly off the pile, stretching, muscles unfurling as if to say, "I wasn't sleeping, I was just resting my eyes." The merchant's wife notices the movement. There, she says. Her voice is soft, like she's speaking to an old friend. "I see you've decided to be useful." You tilt your head, assessing her. You know the language. It's the one reserved for cats who have mastered the art of stealth and timing. You respond with the same composed, dignified stare that would cause most humans to chuckle nervously. She laughs softly and sets aside her embroidery, nodding at you. "All right, Sir Meowlington. I suppose you want to hear about dinner." You don't need to hear anything. You already know, but you allow her the small satisfaction of feeling like she's in on your plans. Downstairs, someone knocks over a chair and a chorus of voices rises as preparations are finalized. You stretch again, just to make sure everything is in order. You take one last glance around the room, the tidy chaos of embroidered cushions, the quiet lull of the laundry stacked neatly beside you, the candle flickering gently by the window. All of this is yours in a sense, and you know without a doubt that the night is young. Dinner may be served, but there are still hours ahead to wander the halls, search for crumbs, and find a soft spot to curl up once more. This day is yours, in the way that only a cat's day truly is. The evening unfolds like the soft, warm pages of a well-worn book, the kind that doesn't require you to think too hard. The scent of dinner lingers in the air, mixed with the clinking of dishes and the soft murmur of voices from below. You could be anywhere. You could be any cat, anywhere in Amsterdam, or even in the world. But here you are, and here you'll stay. You watch the flickering candlelight in the corner, casting soft shadows on the wall. The merchant's wife hasn't moved, still lost in the rhythm of her stitching. Her needle dips in and out of the fabric, as if weaving an invisible spell of comfort over the room. You almost wish you could join her, just to feel the soft tugs of thread against your fur, but your dignity is intact for now. The maid continues her work with the towels, her movements methodical, as if she's measured her entire day by the number of folds she can execute in one sitting. You observe her. For a moment, flicking your tail slowly, she's probably waiting for the family to call her down to dinner, but she knows, just as you do, that the real meal is what's left over. It's always the leftovers that taste the best. The sun dips lower outside the window, the orange light slanting through the glass and casting a warm, amber glow over the room. The room feels like it's holding its breath. Everything is still. Even the pigeons outside, who were once so interested in watching you, are now content to merely exist. The air cools, and the warmth from the fire seems to retreat into the hearth. You are content. Your stomach growls softly, but you ignore it. After all, dinner isn't quite your business, is it? You're here to observe and to plan. The maid, noticing your nonchalance, crosses the room with a sigh. She must have heard the sound of clinking silver downstairs and knows she's not included in the meal. She mutters to herself about figures of authority, and you let it slide. In this house, there are always figures of authority. You happen to be one of them. There's a gentle clatter as a few plates are set on the side table in the corner, intended to be a sort of overflow station for the family's post-dinner tidbits. The maid shoots you a look, her eyebrows raised in silent challenge. You don't even have to move. You can already tell by the way she eyes the plate of leftover bread and cheese that this is your territory now. She sighs again, resigned, and shifts her attention back to her work. That's when you hear it. The unmistakable crunch of someone snacking on something decidedly forbidden. You recognize the sound immediately. It's the child, the one who earlier declared you Sir Mowlington, now sneaking cookies from the kitchen. She's either unaware or simply too hungry to care, but either way, her mischief is your cue. With perfect timing, you jump from your perch on the windowsill and sneak out the door, ensuring the maid won't spot you. You're on your way, silently but surely, through the narrow hallways of the house, dodging the creaky floorboards and stepping lightly on the rugs. At the kitchen door, you pause. The hinges creak slightly when you push them open, but the child is too busy munching on her prize to notice you. Her hands are sticky, and crumbs fall like confetti onto the floor. She reaches for another cookie, blissfully unaware of the predator waiting just outside her reach. You wait. You wait a beat too long, but your patience pays off when she leaves her perch by the table and steps into the next room, leaving the plate wide open. You pounce. The plate topples, and the cookies scatter. You're in the middle of it now. Every scrap of baked goodness available for your taking. Your first bite is warm, soft, and buttery. A fine reward, you think. You nibble and savor each crumb, not hurrying. You deserve it. The family's voices drift down from the dining room, more distant now, but still present. You wonder briefly if they miss you, but then you think of the maid folding laundry upstairs and decide that perhaps it's best to stay where the action is. A sudden movement behind you. The child has returned, eyes wide with surprise. She stops dead, staring at the cookies, then at you, sitting contentedly in the center of the kitchen. Her mouth opens in protest, but there's a deep pause. One of realization. She knows better than to fight you. "Sir Meowlington, you took them all," she whispers, half scolding, half amused. You give her a blank stare, finishing the last cookie with a slow, deliberate motion. Let her think what she wants. The cookies are yours after all. You earned them. With that, you give her a slow blink, your victory sealed. You slip out of the kitchen as casually as you came in, letting the door close softly behind you. Back in the sitting room, the merchant's wife is still quietly stitching. The maid is finally done with her laundry, folding the last towel into an orderly pile. Her eyes flick toward you as you saunter past her. You offer her a slow, unbothered stretch, just to make sure she knows exactly how much you've enjoyed your snack. The clock ticks on, the day drifting toward night. A light breeze ruffles the curtains, and you curl back into your favorite spot by the window, the gentle glow of the streetlights below flickering in the darkening sky. You close your eyes for a moment, content with your day's triumphs. Cookies, comfort, and an uninterrupted existence in this quiet corner of 17th century Amsterdam. Tomorrow will bring more snacks, more lounging, and maybe even another visit from an overly serious merchant. But for now, the world can wait. The night presses gently on the house, as if the world outside has gone to sleep, leaving only a soft hum of voices and the distant creak of wood. The shadows in the room stretch long, curling like silent witnesses to your quiet kingdom. You settle deeper into your chosen spot, curled by the windowsill, where the warmth of the room mixes with the chill of the evening air. There's something about the slow rhythm of the house at night that makes it feel like everything is moving in slow motion. Even the ticking of the clock seems softer, more drawn out, like the house is savoring each passing second. In the distance, the sound of a horse's hooves echoes along the cobblestone streets. It's a familiar sound. It signals the close of another day. You watch a few more boats glide down the canal. The faint ripple of water, the only movement in an otherwise still world. A sense of quiet settles deeper into your bones. The merchant's wife, who has been steadily stitching all evening, sets, her hoop down. She stretches her fingers with a soft sigh, as if relieved from a day's work. You notice her glance toward the door, where the maid has quietly retreated. For a moment, you wonder if she's thinking of calling her back to fetch something, but the thought seems to fade as she slowly stands and stretches as well. The world outside must be waiting for her, but here, in this moment, she seems content. The house, as usual, is full of soundless conversation. The maid reappears briefly, just to ensure that the fire hasn't gone out and to straighten the chairs in the dining area. She glances toward the table, where a few crumbs from the earlier dinner still sit, untouched, and for the briefest of moments, her eyes flick to you. But only for a moment. You've earned your place here. No need for her to interfere. With her final task complete, she disappears into the hall, the click of the door faint in the air. And then, at last, you're alone again. It's a rare sort of quiet that only cats fully appreciate. A deep, enveloping silence that carries with it the feeling of solitude without the loneliness. The soft fabric of the curtains billows gently in the night breeze. The clock, which had previously seemed so insistent, now ticks at a much slower pace, and you find yourself lulled by the sound, almost hypnotized. But there's more to your world than the stillness of the house. Out there, the stars twinkle through the gaps in the window, and the sky has darkened to a rich navy blue. You could sleep, of course. Just curl up and rest until the morning. But there's something about the night that makes you restless, like a whisper that calls you just beyond reach. You leap softly from your perch and pad across the room, silent as a shadow. You slip past the merchant's wife, who is now seated in an armchair, her eyes closed, her head tilted back as if listening to the hum of the house. You pause for a moment at the edge of the room, watching her, and then you turn toward the door. The hallway beyond is dark, lit only by the flicker of a low lamp. You venture out, knowing that soon you will be back to the most comfortable part of your evening, the exploration. The house is your playground after all, and no place is off limits for you. You glide down the narrow corridor, feeling the cool wood beneath your paws, savoring the contrast to the warmth of the sitting room. You know exactly where to go. The kitchen. The sound of a distant clock chimes in the next room as you slip past the staircase, avoiding a stray chair leg that sticks out just a bit too far. The kitchen door is cracked open, the faint smell of dinner remnants still lingering in the air. The maid must have left it that way, and you, being a cat, would never miss such an opportunity. The kitchen is dim, the only light coming from the low-burning embers in the hearth. The pots and pans rest quietly on the counter, awaiting the next meal. The cabinet doors are slightly ajar, revealing the chaos of half-used spices, jars, and bags of dried herbs. You pad over to the stone floor, cool against your paws, and head straight for the corner where the breadcrumbs were left behind earlier. You sniff the air, and sure enough, the scent of something faintly sweet lingers. You look over your shoulder to make sure no one is watching. No one is. The house, for all its grandiosity, has moments like this, when it feels as though you've stolen a slice of time all for yourself. With quick, delicate movements, you nudge aside a small tin plate that had been left carelessly on the counter. A forgotten crust of bread sits, waiting for you. You don't hesitate. A single quiet nibble, and you're back at it. More crumbs, and a piece of cheese, slightly dried but still satisfying. The meal is yours for the taking. There's a strange joy in the simplicity of it all, the way you've earned this tiny triumph, knowing no one else will ever claim it. The clock's ticking seems further away now, more distant. As you move deeper into the kitchen, your tail flicking in delight as you search for more morsels. You find a forgotten half pear left by the maid earlier in the day, its skin slightly wrinkled but still firm. You nudge it, and it rolls softly across the counter. You bat it for a moment just to see how it feels, and then pause to nibble. It's almost as if the house, for all its size and formality, were designed just for you, where even the small scraps of food taste like fine delicacies, and the cool, shadowy corners are waiting to be explored. The world outside seems miles away, a place you might have visited in some other life. For now, you're here, living quietly in your piece of history, a small but significant part of this great, bustling city. You finish the pear, and with one last look toward the door, you glide back to the sitting room. The merchant's wife has moved now, adjusting the cushions in her armchair, preparing to retire for the night. She pats the seat next to her, a signal of invitation you accept easily. You leap up, curl into a ball beside her, and begin to doze, feeling the soft rise and fall of her chest as she breathes deeply. And so the night continues, gentle and still. The world may turn outside, but inside the house, time feels as though it's barely moving. The warmth of the fire, the rhythmic ticking of the clock, and the soft breathing of those who share this space with you all weave together in a tranquil, unhurried rhythm. You close your eyes and, in the space between waking and sleeping, drift once more into the quiet peace of the evening. The hours creep by almost imperceptibly, like the slow, steady breath of the house itself. The night deepens, and all around, you. The sounds of life continue to hum, but softly, as if the world outside were merely a suggestion. The fire's glow has dimmed to a dull ember, its warmth now only a gentle memory that lingers in the room. You shift slightly in your comfortable spot, your tail curling around your paws as the darkness outside thickens. From here, nestled in your cozy corner, you can just barely hear the faintest murmur of voices drifting up from the lower floors, where the merchant's family enjoys their final moments of the day, somewhere between laughter and soft conversation. Perhaps they're discussing tomorrow's market plans or the best way to prepare fish for supper. You're not entirely sure. Their words are a blur, indistinct and soothing, like a lullaby that has long since lost its meaning but retains its calming rhythm. You're content to let their voices wash over you, knowing you are far removed from the burdens of their daily lives. Your whiskers twitch, and for a moment, you imagine what it would be like to have such things to discuss. Things that matter to humans, like markets and plans, and the comings and goings of the world. But it's not your world. No, you have far more important matters to attend to, like finding the coziest spot in the house. With a deliberate, stretched-out movement, you rise from your place by the merchant's wife, who is now soundly asleep, a soft smile on her lips. She's as peaceful as you feel, her presence warm and grounding. You give her one last, affectionate glance before slipping silently to the floor. Her breath rises and falls gently in the dim room, the only sound that rivals the faint, comforting ticking of the clock. The house is filled with soft, purposeful quiet now. The maid has already retired, no longer a presence in the hallways. The merchant's office, where he toils during the day, is dark, the door ajar only slightly, allowing a slice of moonlight to fall across the wooden floor. It's a place that has seen its share of business dealings and paperwork, but now it's just a room, abandoned for the night, waiting for the next day to bring with it more of the same. You move through the hallways, your paws light and soundless on the cool floorboards. The silence is thick enough to be tangible, a soothing blanket that makes every step feel like a soft caress. The night is so quiet, it feels almost like a dream. You slip into the dining room. The table is cleared, of course, but a few stray crumbs remain on the floor. You pad over to inspect them. One small, slightly soggy piece of bread sits abandoned in the corner of the room, just within reach. You don't hesitate. It's the perfect size for a quick snack. A little nibble here and there doesn't hurt, especially when you've been so graciously ignored by the family at dinner time. You savor the bread slowly, carefully. No need to rush. There's no one around to rush you. In this moment, it's just you and the remnants of a long day, and that's perfectly fine. As you finish your midnight snack, a familiar sound echoes down the hallway. A light, rhythmic creaking. It's the merchant's wife, stirring slightly in her sleep. You pause, ear pricked, but there's no need for concern. She's simply adjusting her position. You can hear her soft, contented hum from here, the kind of sound a person makes when they're deep in a dream, unaware of the passage of time. You move on, this time turning toward the stairs. You don't have any particular destination in mind. You simply want to explore, to drift through the house as you see fit. Perhaps it's the soft glow of the moon through the window, or the endless patience of the night. But tonight seems like the perfect time to wander. You take the stairs slowly, your paws silent against the worn steps. The upper floors are a bit cooler than the rooms below, but the air smells fresh, untouched by the lingering sense of dinner. It's a calming scent, like the promise of something new, or the anticipation of a quiet evening ahead. At the top of the stairs, you turn into the long corridor that leads to the merchant's bedroom. It's a room you're all too familiar with, dim, filled with dark furniture and heavy curtains that shield it from the outside world. The space has its own kind of stillness, as though it's been waiting for someone to notice it for ages. And yet, it's not your favorite room. No, there's something much more appealing in the room just beyond it, the guest bedroom. You make your way toward the room with the softest rugs, thick, plush, almost like walking on clouds. The walls are adorned with tapestries of rich blues and golds, depicting scenes of distant lands, long-forgotten kings, and merchants who sailed on mighty ships. You pause in the doorway for a moment, letting the cool air of the room wash over you. This room has the quiet peace of a space that has been used, but never overly disturbed. It has a sense of calm, like the kind of room someone would choose to escape to after a long day, to rest and let their mind drift away from the noise of life. The bed, of course, is the softest place in the house. You leap up onto the plush mattress, your paws sinking into the gentle surface. You curl into a ball, tucking your head beneath your paws. The blankets are warm here, even in the nights. Cool embrace. The softness of the pillow beneath you invites you to relax even further. But before you allow yourself to drift completely into sleep, you pause and listen for a moment longer. The house still hums with that low, almost imperceptible pulse of life. The sound of the merchant's wife breathing softly, the distant rustle of the maid's footsteps upstairs, and the faint crackle of the hearth in the next room. The world, it seems, will carry on whether you're awake or not. And with that thought, your eyes slip shut. The house, now your home, carries on without you. But tonight at least, you will be a part of its quiet rhythm, silent, invisible, and at peace. The house, dark and still, has slipped into a rhythm of its own. A gentle heartbeat that echoes softly through the walls, slow and comforting. The faintest sounds from downstairs drift up to you, the occasional creak of a floorboard, the far-off rustling of linen as someone shifts in their sleep. You lie curled on the bed in the guest room, the softness of the blankets cradling you, your body loose and comfortable. And for a moment, the world feels distant, almost dreamlike. The only thing that remains real is the weight of your own breathing, deep and slow, drawing you further into the warmth of sleep. The moonlight that filters through the window casts delicate patterns on the floor, a soft silver glow that seems to shimmer and dance with the flicker of the last embers in the hearth. Time, it seems, has slowed to a crawl. There's no urgency. In the night, no rush for anything. Everything that matters has already settled into its place, from the merchant's quiet breathing to the slow, deliberate tick of the clock downstairs. It's the perfect moment to rest. You could sleep for hours. There's no reason to wake up, no expectation of action. The world could wait until tomorrow. The house will still be here, with its quiet corridors and soft candlelight. But just as your body begins to succumb to the pull of sleep, something stirs within the house, a subtle vibration in the air, the slightest shift. It's the sound of movement, a footstep, a creak of the stairs. It doesn't alarm you. It's just the soft sounds of life. The merchant's wife, perhaps, turning in her sleep. Maybe the maid is up early, preparing the day's first tasks. But it's nothing to be concerned about. You remain perfectly still, listening for a while. The footsteps fade, replaced by a soft murmur, like the sound of whispers in another room. You imagine what they might be saying, the words lost in the distance. Some hushed conversation, an exchange of thoughts before the day begins. You could open your eyes, peek out from beneath the blankets, and find out. But the temptation is fleeting, like the taste of something delicious that you don't need to savor right now. Instead, you stay there, resting, your thoughts swirling, just beneath the surface. The quiet is more than enough. The sound of the world continues, but now it's gentle. The house, in all its age and stillness, becomes a refuge, a place of deep comfort. The night outside is so quiet that it seems to have swallowed all the noise, leaving only the soothing pulse of your breath and the soft whistling of wind through the cracks in the window. You know that in a few hours, the house will come alive. Again, the maid will begin her duties, and the merchant's wife will likely prepare breakfast. Perhaps there will be more errands to run, more chatter about the day ahead. The world will reassert itself with all its noise and bustle. But for now, everything is still, as though frozen in this moment between night and day. A deep, contented sigh escapes you as you stretch beneath the blankets, your muscles uncoiling and relaxing further into the soft mattress. The house settles around you, and you are part of it, woven into the fabric of this quiet, intimate place. You are a part of the house's rhythm, as essential as the sound of the clock's tick or the way the fire crackles in the hearth. Time passes in gentle waves. The soft tick-tick-tick of the clock below is now a rhythmic lullaby, and soon it fades entirely into the background. The moonlight grows fainter as the sky shifts. The first rays of dawn are starting to creep over the horizon, but it's still a secret, known only to the stars above. The house has yet to stir, and so you remain in this suspended moment, tucked away in the folds of sleep. In the distance, the faintest sound reaches your ears, a low, almost imperceptible rustling. You strain to hear, but it's too far off, too quiet. Perhaps it's just the wind. Or perhaps it's the merchant's wife shifting once more, restless, in her dreams. Either way, it doesn't disturb you. The world continues its slow turn, and you're free to drift, to sink deeper into the comfort of the bed. With a final soft breath, you allow your eyes to flutter shut once more, the house's soft pulse guiding you back into slumber. In the peace of the room, with the gentle hum of the house surrounding you, the day feels far away, as though it doesn't matter. The sun will rise, but not yet. For now, there's only the silence, the warmth, and the quiet rhythm of the house that has become your own. You awaken not with a jolt, but with a lazy, instinctive flick of the tail, the kind that says, "Yes, I know morning's arrived, but let's not rush into anything dramatic just yet." There's a pale ribbon of light slicing across the guest bedroom floor now, filtering in through the gap between the heavy curtains. It's the color of fresh cream, soft and slow, stretching toward you with the promise of a new day. You yawn. It's a long one, mouth open wide, jaw stretching to a faint click. Then you curl your body in the opposite direction like a fluffy cinnamon bun, unraveling slightly. For a moment, you just lie there, basking in the warmth of your own fur and the lingering scent of lavender from the embroidered pillow beneath your chin. This guest bed is still the softest surface in the entire house, and you briefly debate staying here until noon. But the house is starting to breathe again. Downstairs, the first truly human sound of the morning stirs, a muffled clatter in the kitchen, probably the maid dropping a spoon or shifting a pot. It's always the kitchen first. The Dutch pride themselves on punctuality, especially in the 17th century. Historians still argue whether this cultural obsession with orderliness was born of Protestant discipline, a merchant's sense of time is money, or simply a practical response to damp, mold-loving winters. Whatever the cause, it means early mornings and polished surfaces. You slide off the bed with practiced grace, landing silently on the floor. The rug feels cool, but not cold beneath your pads, a comforting contrast to the warm air trapped beneath the bed's downy covers. Stretching luxuriously, one leg out, then the other, you pad quietly toward the hall. The smell of warm milk, freshly scraped hearth ash, and soap already wafts up the stairwell. Breakfast is beginning. There's a brief detour to the windowsill. From this angle, you can see the rooftops of Amsterdam bathed in gentle morning haze. Seagulls wheel above, squawking at each other in that quarrelsome, sleep-disrupting way only birds and merchants seem to manage. Somewhere, a church bell begins to chime, 6 short, echoing notes. Dawn is officially done with its subtlety. Back downstairs, the household has begun its slow, orderly march toward productivity. The maid is humming under her breath, a tune you've heard dozens of times, a simple, lilting melody about a girl and a butter churn. Possibly allegorical, probably not. She's preparing breakfast with a kind of sleepy precision, laying out slices of rye bread, a wedge of hard cheese, a small dish of pickled herring. Dutch breakfasts aren't fancy, but they do the job. You stroll in, tail high, confident, even, regal. After all, you're not a guest here. You're family, or something like it. The maid spots you and, as usual, gives you the tiniest piece of fish before returning to her duties. She doesn't speak to you. You're not that kind of cat, but you feel the mutual respect. You, the mysterious house shadow. She, the keeper of warmth and scraps. You eat the fish slowly, savoring its saltiness. Then find your customary seat by the stove. This is the sunniest corner of the kitchen at this hour, and you've claimed it since you were a kitten. The stove radiates a deep, mellow heat, just enough to toast your paws while your ears stay cool in the breeze from the slightly open back door. As you settle in, you keep one eye on the morning's activity. The merchant enters, dressed already in his sober woolen coat and starched collar. His hair is neatly combed, his beard trimmed. He is the embodiment of orderly commerce. As usual, he grunts something to the maid. Never quite a greeting, more of an announcement that he's still alive and would like breakfast now. Thank you. You've noticed that merchants have a very specific walk in the mornings. Stiff, brisk, and vaguely impatient, as though their feet are already late for a meeting their heads haven't fully scheduled yet. Your merchant is no exception. He moves from kitchen to office with the same deliberate rhythm he uses to check his ledgers or sniff a shipment of cloves for freshness. You follow him, not out of affection necessarily, but out of curiosity. You're a cat. You're professionally nosy. Inside his study, he lights the oil lamp, though daylight already spills through the windows. He examines a letter left open on his desk, lips pursed, a shipment delayed. Again. The tone of his sigh tells you that this is the kind of letter that prompts grumbling and a second cup of ale. You hop onto a stool by the hearth and observe him, chin resting on your paws. This is where human problems unfold most predictably. The room smells of parchment, wax, dried ink, and faintly of sweat, the anxious kind. You've watched him weigh coins, draft bills of lading, calculate the difference between Amsterdam and Constantinople silver rates. It's a lot of numbers and lines, and frankly, not as fun as chasing dust motes. But there's something comforting about his consistency. You could set your nap schedule by his movements. As he mutters about interest rates and those fools in Leiden, you drift again into a light doze. Morning light plays across the floorboards, slow and golden. In this moment, time feels suspended. The house is fully awake now, alive with human motion, but you remain a quiet thread through it all, ever present, soft-footed, watching the day unfold without needing to shape it. And just as you're starting to doze again, a loud caw pierces the silence. The window. That crow. You. Open one eye, there it is, perched brazenly on the kitchen windowsill, pecking at the sill like it owns the place. Again, every day, without fail, that blasted bird shows up like it has an open invitation. You suspect the maid fed it once last spring, and now it considers itself part of the household. You've tried intimidating it, staring at it, even launching a surprise lunge once. You missed. Nothing works. Crows, it seems, have very short fear spans and even longer memories. Still, it keeps things interesting. And so the day continues, slow and predictable, filled with the creaks and routines of a well-ordered household. You stretch again, ears flicking at the sounds of broom bristles sweeping the floor, and remind yourself, there's a nap to be had before midday. A proper one, the kind where the sun warms your back, the humans stay busy elsewhere, and not even a crow dares disturb you. You've returned to your favourite sunlit nook in the front room now, a south-facing stretch of floor between a Delft-tiled hearth and a scratchy but serviceable chair where the merchant likes to read. The sunlight hits this spot with enviable consistency, a trait you admire deeply. As you settle down and begin the slow, circular spin that precedes any truly worthwhile nap, your ears twitch faintly at the steady tap of wooden shoes on cobblestones. Outside, the city is in full motion. Amsterdam in the late 17th century is many things, bustling, soggy, fish-scented, but it's also orderly in its chaos. From your sunny vantage point, you can hear the clink of a milk jug being set outside, the distant clang of a bell marking a merchant barge's arrival, and, if you listen closely, the faint calls of street vendors hawking eel pies and sheets of cheap paper. Your eyelids grow heavy as the house hums around you. The maid is sweeping again. The rhythm of the broom bristles against the pine floorboards is oddly soothing, a soft shush, shush, shush that lulls rather than disturbs. Occasionally she mumbles to herself, reciting her tasks for the day like a spell to ward off forgetfulness. Scrub the brass, shake the bed ticks, skim the cream. Historians still argue whether Dutch households of the Golden Age were truly as spotless as their portraits suggest, or whether painters just had a fondness for exaggerated domestic pride. Either way, this maid treats dust like a personal insult. You once saw her mop the inside of a teapot, but her presence is oddly calming, a kind of predictable background thrum to your morning doze. You shift your body just enough to expose your belly to the sun and stretch your back legs. There, that's better. The fire in the hearth has died down, leaving only a few warm embers and the faint scent of charred peat. You bask in that, letting the warm floor soak into your bones. You're not entirely asleep, but you're not exactly awake either. It's a purring state of in-betweenness, what a philosopher might call liminality, and what you call living, the dream. Then you hear it, a thump from upstairs, a subtle one, and then a pause, then a louder clatter, something wooden falling over. You lift your head, ears pricking slightly. There it is again. A voice now, muffled, annoyed, feminine. The merchant's wife. Apparently she's awake. You close your eyes again. This is not your concern. Whatever's fallen over is probably a comb or one of those ridiculously pointy bodices she keeps, stacked in her wardrobe like decorative torture devices. There's another thud, followed by the unmistakable rustle of fabric and the faint, warbling meow of, wait. Oh no, it's her cat. You sit up, instantly alert, every muscle taut. That sound wasn't yours. It came from upstairs, from the merchant's wife's bedroom. Your tail flicks, not out of fear exactly, but out of calculated annoyance. See, she has another cat, a newcomer, a long-haired Persian, gifted to her by her cousin from Leiden, who has questionable taste in both cats and husbands. This cat, whom we'll generously refer to as Fritzy, is a walking puffball with the brain power of a teacup. She preens constantly, meows theatrically when ignored for more than 30 seconds, and once mistook a bowl of lard for her reflection and attempted to kiss it. Your relationship is cordial at best, icy at worst. You don't hate her. You just prefer not to acknowledge her. But Fritzy has opinions. She believes every room belongs to her. Every cushion is her personal throne. And worse, far worse, she has recently taken to using your sunny spot by the hearth. You sigh deeply, contemplating whether it's worth engaging in the inevitable passive-aggressive standoff. On one paw, you are supremely comfortable. On the other, your reputation is at stake. This house has a hierarchy after all. She appears in the doorway with all the grace of a fallen pastry, fluffed, prim, eyes blinking with unearned innocence. Fritzy. She hesitates, spotting you sprawled across the sunbeam, and lets out one of her trademark half meows, like she's unsure whether to announce her presence or ask for a footman to carry her in. You don't move. This is a test, a standoff. She takes 2 dainty steps forward. You narrow your eyes. Another step. You yawn, loudly, showing all your teeth. She pauses, tail twitching. You think you've won. But then, betrayal. The maid walks in, scoops Fritzy up, and places her directly next to you, cooing something about warm friends. She even gives her a little kiss on the nose. Fritzy purrs like she invented purring. You sigh again and shift half an inch to the left. Let her have a corner of the sunbeam. This isn't over. You're just picking your battles. The two of you lie there in the sunlight, sharing an awkward truce. It's warmer now, almost stifling, but not unpleasant. Your body relaxes despite yourself, and before long, you find your eyes drifting closed again. Fritzy's motorboat purr now part of the house's soundscape. The world outside continues on, oblivious. A delivery cart rattles past. Somewhere, a dog barks in frustration. A church bell tolls the hour, 8 o'clock. The merchant coughs in his office, possibly reacting to another substandard letter from the East India Company. The maid hums a different tune now, this one about a windmill and a particularly flirtatious baker. And you? You've made your peace with the puffball, at least for now. The sun is warm. The house is clean. And the kitchen smells faintly of apple syrup and boiled oats. You couldn't ask for a better moment to nap. You wake slowly. Not from any alarm, of course. There are no such indignities in this household. No clanging bells or barking orders. Just a subtle shift in the warmth of the floor, a distant creak of the stairs, and the sense, deep in your whiskers, that something edible has entered the room. Your nose confirms it first. a drifting aroma of salted herring, mingled with the dry promise of hard cheese and yesterday's bread crisped on the hearth. It's midday, or close enough to it, and that means lunch for the humans, and possibly, if the wind is in your favor, for you too. You stretch with exaggerated slowness, front paws out, tail high, back arching like a freshly oiled bow. Fritzi, who has moved only far enough to drape herself against the chair leg like a piece of limp embroidery, opens one eye. You nod at her, grudging civility, and slink toward the kitchen. The Dutch kitchen, in this house at least, is a curious blend of precision and chaos. There are copper pots hanging in perfect rows, baskets of turnips and winter apples tucked into shadowed corners, a low brick hearth with a blackened kettle constantly muttering about soup, and always, always a woman moving at 3 speeds at once. Today, it's the cook, a round-cheeked, brisk woman with arms like rolling pins and the temper of someone who knows exactly how much saffron costs. She doesn't dislike you. She just tolerates you, as long as you don't beg, shed, or leap onto the cutting board. These are tragically your 3 favorite activities. Historians still debate how heavily fish figured into the Dutch diet in the 1600s. There's a wealth of paintings featuring markets and kitchen scenes piled high with cod, eel, mussels, and herring. But whether the average merchant household dined on it daily, or just often enough to look respectable in oil on canvas, is still up for debate. One thing's clear: today's lunch is very, very fish-forward. You loiter just outside the threshold, tail upright in what you hope conveys good manners and emotional stability. The cook is slicing a smoked herring with terrifying precision. Beside her sits a dish of pickled onions and a hunk of brown bread, so dense it could repel cannon fire. Then comes the good part. She turns to fetch something, a pot, a spice, a mildly offensive proverb, and in that one blessed moment of absence, a small scrap of herring peels off the knife and flutters to the floor like a fish-scented miracle. It lands 6 inches from your paw. You do not rush. That would be undignified. Instead, you walk calmly toward it, tail flicking, and collect the morsel in a single, quiet bite. Divine. Fritzi, of course, arrives late and uninvited. She makes a sad, breathy chirp and attempts to charm a piece of onion from the cook, who responds by muttering a phrase that sounds like drama in fur pants, and shoos her back toward the hallway. You, on the other hand, are content. Your belly is warm with fish, your fur smells faintly of sunshine and wood smoke, and you're about to do something few Dutch housecats have the privilege of doing: investigate the pantry. Now, before we go any further, let's acknowledge that pantries in 17th century Amsterdam are not the chilly walk-in affairs of modern homes. They are often just cupboards built deep into the wall, shielded with thick doors and stern warnings about rats. But this pantry, this glorious, semi-secret alcove of cured sausage, cinnamon bark, and stacked wedges of cheese, is accessible if you know how. And you do. The maid has left it open slightly, just wide enough for a slim feline shoulder to press through. You make the squeeze, careful not to rattle the hanging ladles. Inside, it's dim, cool, and smells like heaven's soup kitchen. A sack of flour slumps drunkenly in one corner. A jug of vinegar leans against a small wooden crate full of dried apricots. You hop lightly onto a low shelf and sniff a bowl of gooseberries, their papery skins rustling like secrets. There's a cheese wheel here, half-eaten, faintly mouldy, and absolutely off-limits. You lick it once, for science, and find it tastes aggressively like foot. You decide it is not worth the risk of exile, and instead settle into a coil on the floor, half hidden behind a sack of lentils. You nap there for a bit, surrounded by the ghostly bouquet of spice trade dreams: cloves from the Moluccas, peppercorns from India, cinnamon from Ceylon. There's a whole economy here in this closet, a layered reminder that the Dutch Republic isn't just a maritime powerhouse, it's a pantry superpower. You are quite literally napping in the scent of colonial ambition. But let's not get too philosophical. You're a cat. You came, you sniffed, you napped. Eventually, the cook returns, scolds the maid for leaving the pantry open, and startles when she finds you sleeping like a saint among the preserves. She doesn't yell, just mutters something about nosy little moorhens and gently shoes. You back toward the hall with a ladle. Your day resumes as normal. You wander through the dining room where the table is being cleared. A leftover crust falls to the floor. You sniff it, decide it is bread-flavored sadness, and move on. In the parlor, the merchant's wife is reading a letter, sighing dramatically every few minutes, likely hoping someone will ask her what it says. No one does. You curl up on the rug behind her chair and think about herring. The afternoon sun begins to slant westward, painting golden stripes across the floorboards. The house settles into that quiet rhythm again. The sighing silence of digestion, the whisper of pages turning, the distant cry of gulls from the canals. You are, in this moment, supremely full, supremely content, supremely nappable. And so, as the humans sip their post-lunch tea and argue softly about tulip bulbs, you close your eyes once more, tail tucked neatly, ears relaxed. Outside, Amsterdam bustles. Inside, a cat dreams of pantries. The nap you take next is not just a nap. It's a masterclass in inertia, a transcendent loaf state, a feline meditation. You melt into the rug like warm butter on black bread, the weave pattern pressing a sleepy topography into your fur. Outside, the world spins on. Masts creak in the harbour, coins jingle in pockets, and another argument about trade tariffs no doubt rages 2 canals over. But inside this room, time slows to a trickle. You twitch once, faintly, at the sound of a drawer closing, then silence again. Only the occasional creak of timber or tick of the long case clock disturbs the stillness. This, truly, is your domain. But even in such blissful peace, the day waits for no whisker. At some point, it's impossible to say when, your ears swivel toward a new sound. A soft knock at the door, followed by hurried footsteps. The maid, cheeks flushed with either gossip or stares, announces that visitors have arrived. Visitors. The word carries weight. It means one thing to a person, and quite another to a cat. To a human, it's a moment for hospitality, for chatter, for secretly comparing lace collars. To a cat, it means shoes you don't recognize, smells that don't belong, voices that disturb your nap from new and disorienting angles, but also possibilities. You stretch and rise, paw by deliberate paw, and pad toward the hallway to observe. The front door opens to reveal 2 women. One is stout and composed, wrapped in a shawl the colour of cranberry vinegar. The other is taller, with the pinched expression of someone who has just discovered the floors are, in fact, not heated. You give them a once-over. Not fishmongers, not relatives, probably friends of the merchant's wife. This bodes ill for the upholstery. The visitors remove their shoes delicately, as if even their stockinged feet might offend the varnished floor. The maid leads them into the sitting room, where Fritzi is already perched in the window, like she's been waiting to accept their compliments since sunrise. You, however, remain halfway up the stairs, your favourite spot for judging. The stairway offers a perfect vantage. From here you can peer between balusters, observe without participation, and maintain an aura of both presence and detachment. One of the women spots you and smiles. "Oh, is that the Housecat?" She says in Dutch that's slightly too crisp, like she practiced it just for this moment. She claps her hands softly. "Come here, Poche. You do not come here." You blink slowly and turn your head 1 degree to the left. Let her wonder. Historians still argue whether domestic cats in the Dutch Golden Age were beloved companions or merely tolerated mousers. Paintings show them curled under tables, sprawled in kitchens, occasionally nibbling bread crusts or swatting a dropped fish, but rarely do they occupy pride of place. Then again, paintings never tell the whole story. You, for one, have opinions. And today, you shall demonstrate them. You descend the stairs like a velvet ghost. Fritzi chirps at you, her tail flipping excitedly. You pretend not to hear her, and instead make your way across the parlour floor, weaving between chair legs with the grace of a gondola. The tall woman gasps. Whether at your elegance or your audacity, you can't be sure. You stop just short of her skirts and sit. She reaches out a tentative hand. You consider. You sniff. Then you blink slowly and turn away, offering her nothing but your impeccably groomed profile. The other woman laughs, delighted. Such poise, she says. I had one like that once. Never let anyone near unless you were holding a herring. You approve of this comparison. Fritzi, sensing attention, attempts to insert herself. She trots up, rubs against both women with the neediness of a toddler at a tea party, and flops over dramatically on the rug. Her purring becomes a performance. Peace. You excuse yourself. Back in the hallway, you leap up onto the tall chest by the window, the same one the merchant's wife insists must never, under any circumstances, be scratched. You dig one claw delicately into its edge, just once, for emphasis. Then you curl, up among the linen runners, and observe the house from above. The women sip tea. The merchant's wife pretends to be surprised by a story she's probably heard twice already. There's a bowl of dried cherries on the table. A spoon clinks softly. Laughter bubbles up once, then vanishes like steam from the hearth. Time passes in domestic ripples. Eventually, the door opens again, and the merchant returns, his boots damp, his brow creased. He hangs his hat on the peg and mutters something about delays at the customs house. His wife coos sympathetically. The visitors rise and offer practiced bows. Fritzi tries to follow them out. She is intercepted and deposited on a cushion with a stern look. You, meanwhile, have fallen asleep again. In the linen, on the chest, the same chest that supposedly houses the good napkins for visitors. The merchant notices you, says nothing. Perhaps he knows the battle is lost. You awaken only when the house falls still once more, when the sun, beginning its descent, drapes the walls in amber, and the long case clock in the hallway sighs into another hour. Outside, gulls wheel across the sky. The canal glows gold. You rise and stretch again, then leap down soundlessly, your paws touching wood with the softest thump. You pad slowly toward the back of the house, following a smell. Not food this time, but something else. A sharp scent, earthy. The merchant has opened the storeroom, and with it, a glimpse of the backyard garden. Now that could be worth investigating. The door to the storeroom creaks softly behind you. And there it is. A rectangle of fading daylight, spilling onto cobblestones and cabbage leaves. You slip through it like a whisper, paws padding lightly across the threshold as the scents of the backyard garden swell around you. Here, the world changes. The air feels looser, more fragrant. There's damp earth, cut herbs, and the clean bite of early evening. For a moment, everything else fades. The hiss of kettles, the bustle of rooms, even Fritzi's constant prattle. This is your private domain, the wilderness within walls. The merchant's garden isn't grand, not by the standards of the canal houses with sprawling rear courtyards, but it is tidy, clever, and efficient in that very Dutch way. A narrow, brick path snakes between raised beds lined with lavender, chives, and creeping thyme. A pair of potted lemons sit like royalty near the back wall, guarded by two terracotta lions whose expressions suggest they've seen things. You dart past them. Your first stop is the rain barrel. Not for drinking, heavens no, it's for spying. The surface of the water reflects the fading sky, and with your front paws perched on the rim, you can scan the edges of the garden like a sentry at a fish-based fort. Nothing suspicious, just the usual. A woodlouse trekking heroically across the thyme, a pigeon on the roof muttering philosophical complaints, and a distant neighbour arguing with a goose. You hop down and head toward the cabbages. They loom like squat green planets, their waxy leaves curling into themselves protectively. Historians still argue whether cats in 17th century Dutch households helped protect kitchen gardens from pests, or were more often considered pests themselves. Either way, you have appointed yourself guardian of the brassicas. You circle one of the cabbages dramatically, tail high, and leap suddenly, Aha! Onto an unsuspecting beetle. It crunches under paw. You do not eat it, you are not a monster, but you do feel quietly triumphant. A little further along the path lies your true interest, the compost heap. Here, layered like a rustic trifle, is a history of the day's meals and mistakes. Onion skins, eggshells, peels, the occasional mysterious scrap. It hums with the industrious work of decomposition. You sit beside it, regal, as if contemplating something deeply philosophical. You're not. You're just digesting. A flutter draws your eye. The sparrows are back. They gather on the wall. 6 of them, possibly 7, and they do not like you. You, on the other hand, are fascinated. Not because you plan to catch one. You tried once. It ended with you in the herb bed and 3 days of bruised pride. But because they are tiny, chaotic comedians. They chirp arguments, steal breadcrumbs, and swoop like tipsy trapeze artists. You crouch in the marjoram and observe them. Meanwhile, inside the house, preparations for supper begin again. You can hear the faint clang of pans, the mutter of voices, and, yes, the distant, blessed pop of a cork. Wine. That usually means fish. The sun dips lower, and the garden glows golden green. Somewhere beyond the canal, a ship's bell tolls. The pigeons have settled. Even the sparrows seem to sense it's nearly time to tuck in. You take one last loop around the perimeter, your route as habitual as it is pointless. You rub your cheek against the mint stalks. You bat gently at a dangling bit of string tied to a stake. You check the gap under the gate, still too narrow, curses. And finally, you return to the back door. It's been left ajar, an oversight that you, in your infinite benevolence, will not report. Inside, the storeroom smells like beeswax and old linen. You pass through it like a shadow, re-entering the kitchen just as the final touches are being laid on the evening meal. Here comes the fun part. The maid is setting the table. Blue and white plates, pewter spoons, the good glassware. The cook, elbow deep in a bubbling pan, shouts instructions that sound equal parts urgent and absurd. Yes, but only 3 cloves. A small dish of smoked eel sits unattended on the sideboard. You eye it, but you're not reckless. You've been here long enough to know when it's bait. You seat yourself under the table instead. The merchant arrives first, followed by his wife, who looks faintly winded from changing into a second gown. She adjusts her collar, mutters something about the maid forgetting to warm the pewter plates, and sits stiffly. The merchant sighs and reaches for his wine. As they talk, quiet, polite, pointed, you drift into that familiar dinner trance. It's a combination of delicious smells, rising warmth, and the sound of slow chewing. Occasionally, something will fall, a crumb of bread, a sliver of fish, a blessed flick of eel skin, and you'll dart out to claim it with the speed of divine judgment. Fritzi joins you under the table halfway through the soup course, her mouth smelling suspiciously of butter. You don't ask. Historians often cite meals like this, simple, warm, domestic, as defining snapshots of the Dutch Golden Age. Not the wars or the ships or the trading companies, but these moments. A husband and wife eating eel while 2 cats lurk beneath their table like velvet-footed pirates. The conversation turns to politics, then to neighbours, then to whether the maid is still sneaking nutmeg from the spice drawer. You doze off mid-debate. By the time the dishes are cleared and the second glass of wine is poured, you are curled into the hollow of a boot beneath the bench, dreaming of pigeons with pie-crust wings and a garden that smells forever like mint. Another dinner passed, another night approaching. Later in the evening, the house hums with a different kind of energy. Not the bustling daytime sort, full of deliveries and chores, but the quiet, syrupy tension of a family winding down, pretending to be restful while everyone low-key hopes nobody asks them to help clean. You emerge from beneath the bench slowly, stretching in that luxuriously excessive way that only cats can get away with. One paw forward, arch the back, yawn like you're summoning spirits. Behind you, Fritzi does the same, though her version ends in a sneeze and a surprised tumble into a basket of napkins. You do not acknowledge this. Instead, you slink into the hallway, where the last light of day casts long shadows between the beams. The floors are cooler now, the warmth of the kitchen already fading into memory. You pause beside the tall case clock. It ticks steadily, like a heartbeat too slow to be human. The rhythm soothes you. Or maybe it's just the wine-scented air drifting from the parlour. The merchant is reading by the window again. He's cross-legged in his tall chair, balancing a small volume in one hand and a glass of something in the other. His eyes squint under candlelight, and every so often he mutters a phrase aloud, as if trying it on for size. You recognize the tone. It's not conversation. It's the quiet muttering of a man trying to remember if he paid that bill to the cooper last week. You leap gently onto the table beside him, careful to avoid the ink pot. He glances at you. "Not tonight," he says softly, and nudges the pot away just in case. You do not blink. You lower yourself into a loaf and begin purring at a frequency scientifically calibrated to make humans feel vaguely guilty about not feeding you again. Historians still argue whether cats develop their signature purr frequency to mimic the pitch of human infants crying. Whether or not that's true, it works like a charm. Within moments, the merchant sets down his book and tears a small chunk from the heel of a rye loaf. He holds it out. You sniff it once, decline with dignity. He tries again with a pinch of cheese. You accept this, grudgingly. Across the room, his wife is embroidering a small square of linen. You can't see the design from here, but you'd bet your tail it involves tulips. She hums softly, off-key but pleasant, and her needle flickers like a firefly in candlelight. This is the real evening. Unphotographed, unpainted, undocumented. The paintings from this period always show daylight scenes, meals, music, courtships, commerce. But here, in the hush of an ordinary night, is where life happens. Quiet glances, shared cheese, embroidery that may or may not ever be finished. You stretch across the tabletop, one paw sliding elegantly toward the ink blotter. Just before you can swat it, the merchant scoops you up with a practiced sigh and deposits you onto his lap. You approve. He resumes reading, absently stroking your fur as he goes. His fingers are a little rough, calloused from rope or quill, it's hard to say, but gentle in a way that suggests he once owned a dog and has since atoned. From here, your view of the room is warm and slightly tilted. The flames in the fireplace dance behind a screen. The clock ticks steadily on. Fritzi has claimed the cushion closest to the hearth and is currently engaged in a daring battle with a dangling tassel. The merchant murmurs another line from his book. You purr. His wife yawns and sets her embroidery down with a little exhale that says, "Close enough to done." Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaks. Possibly the maid. Possibly a ghost. You make a mental note to investigate later. But not now. Now is the time of late evening stillness, of glowing embers and candle ends. The merchant's hand slows. His breathing deepens. The book slips slightly in his fingers. Outside, the canal reflects the last of the sky. Ink blue and silver, barely rippling. The shutters are drawn. The neighbours have quieted. Even the ducks have miraculously ceased their honking. You shift in the lap, one rotation, half a knead, and settle again. The merchant's wife blows out one candle, then another, until only a few orange halos remain in the room. This part of the day, the soft closing, the candle dimming, the slow ebb into night, it suits you best. Not because you sleep more, though you do, but because the quiet has weight, because in this house, in this century, in this gentle moment, a cat is not merely a hunter of mice or a scratcher of chairs. You are part of the furniture, yes, but also the witness. You are the only one who sees it all. The breadcrumbs dropped, the gossip passed, the little sighs people give when no one else is listening. You close your eyes to slits. Tomorrow the fishmonger will knock again. The pigeons will fight. Fritzi will, inexplicably, try to nap in the flower bin. But tonight, in this flickering, Room. The world is small and perfectly arranged. You sleep. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimes the hour. You do not count how many. It's always too many or not enough. But the sound echoes through the canals like a ghost with good timing. You stir, stretch, roll lazily onto your back for exactly 6 seconds before deciding that's quite enough. Core engagement for one evening. The merchant has dozed off completely now, his hand frozen mid-pat. The book lies open, face down on the rug, utterly abandoned. It had a long paragraph about tariffs. You didn't miss much. Fritzi is still, by the fire, but only just. She's sprawled in a position that resembles a knocked-over mitten, snoring softly with one paw twitching, probably dreaming about sausages, or how she once got stuck behind the bread oven. You hop lightly from the merchant's lap and land, without a sound. Time to begin your third most important evening ritual, the nocturnal perimeter patrol. It starts, as always, with the dining room. Not because it's strategically significant, but because sometimes, someone forgets a crumb. You weave between the chairs like a silent inspector, nose low, tail high, scanning the floor with all the gravitas of a noble on truffle. Duty. Nothing tonight, just a vague smell of nutmeg and someone's spilled wine. Through the hall you go, pausing only to give the grandfather clock a respectful glance. It continues ticking without acknowledging you, like a disinterested uncle. You head upstairs. These stairs, steep and wooden, are an architectural hazard by modern standards, the kind of thing today's building inspectors would see and immediately file a lawsuit about. But you navigate them like liquid. Upstairs is quiet. The master bedroom door is half shut, lamplight seeping through. You don't enter. Not tonight. The merchant is already asleep in his great four-poster bed, one leg dramatically flung over the covers like he's auditioning for a less glamorous painting. Instead, you explore the hall. Here lie all the little secrets of domestic life. A basket of linens waiting to be mended, a chipped chamber pot someone meant to throw away, a bowl of withered apples on a side table that's mostly used to store, candles no one ever lights. The air smells different up here, less spice, more starch and sleep. One door, though, is always slightly ajar, the maid's room. Inside it's barely wider than a wardrobe, a cot, a stool, a chipped mirror. On the wall, someone's scratched a calendar with initials, either prayers or petty grievances, it's hard to tell. Historians still argue whether maids in this era truly had the freedom to keep pets, or if they simply inherited whatever small animals wandered into their corners. In this case, the maid has you. You enter silently and leap onto the foot of her bed. She's curled in a tight ball beneath a wool blanket, breathing steadily. Her hair spills across the pillow like straw. Her boots are under the cot. One sock is on the floor. It smells, how to put this gently, earthy. You don't mind. You sit there for a moment, purring faintly, almost meditatively. Then, without really planning to, you curl beside her feet. It's warmer here, softer, less official. If Fritzi knew you were cheating on the merchant's parlour, she'd cause a scene. But here, in this plain, quiet space, the rhythm of sleep comes quickly. The wind taps against the shutters. Somewhere in the canals, a boat creaks. And beneath you, the steady pulse of someone else's dreams. Later, who knows how much later, you rise again. It's time for the final round of your patrol. The attic. Attics are different at night. During the day, they're dusty storage rooms. At night, they become kingdoms. You leap from beam to beam like a shadow thief. Here's a crate of linens wrapped in moth-eaten cloth. There's a shelf with abandoned shoes. And in the far corner, a forgotten painting, face turned toward the wall as if it knows it's too embarrassing for company. You sniff it once, then move on. In one corner, there's a small crack in the wall where the outside world pokes in. A breeze, a bit of moonlight, and sometimes, if you wait long enough, a moth. Tonight, there's one. You freeze, eyes wide, ears forward. The moth flutters just out of reach, clumsy and aimless, like a powdered drunk. You crouch, wiggle, leap, and land on a bundle of firewood, knocking a stick loose with a satisfying thunk. The moth escapes. You are, as ever, a philosopher warrior. The hunt was more important than the prize. Still, you sulk a little, but there's no time to mourn. The night grows older and the house shifts in its slumber. The boards settle, the canal air thickens, and downstairs, the last of the coals dims into orange glowing crumbs. You make your way back down, not in a rush, but with that peculiar feline sense of purpose. There's a rhythm to the house's breath now, a syncopated silence. Everyone is asleep. Even the mice, if they're smart, are staying put. Back in the kitchen, the hearth has gone cold, but your favourite spot, the corner cushion near the woodbin, is still faintly warm from earlier. Heat. You curl there now slowly, luxuriously, the way royalty settles into imported silk. The outside world, the ships and the guilds and the arguments over tulip prices, means nothing here. You are a 17th century Dutch housecat. You have patrolled. You're home. You have judged the wine. You have ignored at least 6 attempts at affection. You are simply eternal. The night stretches long and thick now, syrupy in its quiet. Every creak of wood feels older than it is. The house breathes, sighs, shifts a little in its bones. You, half asleep, half listening, are curled into your cushion by the kitchen hearth, your tail flicking in the rhythm of a cat, both incredibly alert and aggressively indifferent. It's in these twilight hours, tucked between midnight and morning, that the mice dare to test their luck. You sense it before you hear it. That faintest of rustles, a scritch beneath the cupboard. Maybe 2. Maybe it's the bold one from last week, the one with the limp and the attitude. You open one eye, but do not rise. Not yet. Let them get comfortable. Historians still argue whether cats were employed in early modern households or simply tolerated freeloaders with good PR. Technically, you could be both. You've done your part. You've reduced the household mouse population by a statistically impressive margin this month. You deserve a union, or at least a raise in the form of a second breakfast. But now, it's a matter of principle. You rise with the kind of slow grace usually reserved for minor deities and ballet dancers. Each paw step is silent, deliberate. You round the corner of the cabinet, ears forward, whiskers twitching like antennae. There. Movement. The bold mouse. Probably named himself Hendrik or something absurd. He pauses. You pause. A silent moment of shared theatrical tension passes. Then you dart. He zips under the cabinet. You swat. He squeaks. You crouch, tail twitching furiously. Fritzi, having sensed drama, pokes her head in from the hall. Eyes wide with that glassy, late-night enthusiasm cats sometimes adopt, just before they destroy something expensive. And then, anticlimax. Hendrik escapes, under the baseboard. Gone. Again. You plop down in the middle of the kitchen floor with an audible thud. Fritzi pads up beside you and flops down in tandem. For a moment, you both stare at the baseboard, like 2 philosophers mourning the cruelty of entropy. Then you both yawn. In the corner of the kitchen, the water basin glints in the moonlight. You wander over and lap at it daintily, because hydration is the cornerstone of smugness. The water tastes faintly of copper and old soap. Not ideal, but it'll do. You make another loop around the room, more out of habit than urgency. There's a forgotten piece of onion skin under the table. You bat it once, just to make sure it knows you're not impressed. Eventually you end up back at the cushion, curling in tighter this time. Fritzi joins you, her nose pressed into your side, her purring soft as kettle steam. You tolerate it. From outside, there's a faint splash. Maybe a duck, maybe a falling tile, maybe just the sound of the night reminding you it exists. You stare into the darkness of the hallway, eyes half-lidded, not because there's danger, but because staring into the void is a very underrated pastime. You imagine the city beyond, the lopsided streets of Delft, The canals rippling in the breeze, the shutters clicking on a neighbour's house as someone leans out to toss chamber pot contents into the water below. Oh yes, that's a thing. Chamber, pots. Let's not dwell too long on it. The smell of vinegar and old brass lingers faintly in the walls. Somewhere in the pantry, something shifts again. Maybe just settling wood. Maybe Hendrik staging an underground mouse opera. Hard to say. You're not on duty anymore. Fritzy snores. You shift a bit to get more blanket real estate. This is the long middle of the night, when nothing happens, and everything happens. When the paint peels just a little more from the windowsill. When the last candle stubs finish burning in their brass holders. When dreams flicker and dissolve like sugar in tea. It's also when cats like you begin your dream journeys. You dream of the fish stall by the canal, where herrings dangle like silver medals, just waiting to be stolen. Of chasing that smug rooster from across the street. Of scaling the merchant's spice rack and discovering a hidden shelf of forbidden meats. Historians have no records of cat dreams from the 1600s, which is truly their loss. In one dream, you are sitting at the merchant's desk wearing a tiny ruff collar, stamping documents with a paw-sized seal. In another, you're 9 feet tall, and the pigeons apologize to you. Fritzy appears in your dreams occasionally too, usually asking where the good cheese is kept and then forgetting before you tell her. Downstairs, the house remains unchanged. A crate shifts slightly. A spoon slides in a bowl. Time continues, as it always does, as it always must. And you, apex predator of the pantry, duchess of the windowsill, muse to at least one bored apprentice, painter, you sleep on, twitching, purring, dreaming of crumbs, buttons, shadows, and the quiet theatre of your own imagined empire. You awaken sometime later, not with a jolt, not dramatically, but with the slow, squinting suspicion that something has changed. Fritzy has vanished, leaving only a warm dent in the cushion beside you. The kitchen is darker now, the moonlight thinner, as if the night itself is running out of ink. You stretch again, long and low, letting out a yawn so vast it could swallow a mouse whole, if there were one conveniently nearby. Sadly, Hendrik has not returned for round 2. It's the very edge of night now, the final act. Everything in. The house seems to lean forward slightly as if anticipating the arrival of morning. But not yet. Not quite. You pad toward the hallway. There's a particular spot near the front door where the air changes first. A draft, perhaps, or just that subtle electric tingle of dawn preparing its costume. You sit there a while, tail curled neatly around your paws, watching the door like a sentry. You're not guarding anything specific. You're just present. Historians still argue whether cats in the Dutch Golden Age had any sense of linear time. Did they notice the shift from season to season? Did they feel the difference between market day and Sunday? Or did they live entirely in an eternal now, one fish-scented moment at a time? You, of course, are timeless, but you do notice when the baker's boy passes by with his rickety cart, and he hasn't come by yet. That's how you know it's not quite dawn. Almost, but not quite. The house is still in its deepest sleep. Upstairs, someone mumbles in a dream. The maid shifts in her cot. You sense, rather than hear, the merchant snore, falter, and resume. A lifetime of tobacco pipes and port wine gives his breathing the soothing rhythm of an old accordion. You return to the parlour. This is where you began your evening, and it feels fitting to pass back through. The fire is no more than a memory, but you circle the cold hearth anyway, brushing your side against the brick. The rug still holds the faint indent of the merchant's boots. You hop up onto the window seat, your favourite vantage point. The shutters are cracked just wide enough to let in a sliver of the outside world. You peer through them. The canal lies still, a frozen ribbon of ink. The water glints faintly, reflecting the last of the stars. A single lantern swings on a post, casting a shaky golden halo over the bridge. There's no one about. Not yet. But then, a flicker of movement. A barge slides quietly beneath the bridge, its oars barely disturbing the surface. On board, two silhouettes hunched in thick coats guide it gently through the dark. You watch them as only a cat can, curious, impassive, judgmental. The barge disappears around the bend, vanishing like a thought you meant to write down and didn't. Behind you, the grandfather clock wheezes, not quite ready to strike the hour, just coughing politely to announce its intentions. And then, you hear her. Fritzi, on the stairs. She pads down with the self-important daintiness of a cat who thinks she invented descending. She joins you at the window without asking and presses her nose to the pane. You sit together in silence, watching. Nothing in particular. The rooftops. A passing bird, maybe. A chimney emitting one soft puff. Somewhere, someone begins to stir in a bakery, and you can almost smell the first hints of rising dough. Fritzi glances at you and lets out one small murp, the feline equivalent of, "Do you feel that too?" You do. The city is yawning. The color of the sky changes, just barely. The black turns navy, then bruised blue, then something that almost wants to be lavender. Light begins to lick at the window edges, hesitant, like a child peeking through a curtain. You both rise. There's one more stop before this night becomes a memory. The workshop. The door is ajar. It always is. The merchant keeps it that way, believing it inspires the muse. You slip in first. Fritzi follows. Together, you become small shadows among greater ones. The room smells of ink and oil and old wood. Brushes lie in disarray, some still wet with the day's colours. Canvases lean at every angle, some finished, some abandoned. One, just a faint sketch of a woman's wrist. You hop up onto the merchant's work table, careful not to knock over the pigment jars. The light here is different now. Dawn seeps in through the high window like watered milk. It glows faintly against the bottles, casting rainbow halos on the stone. You sit. This truly is your kingdom. Historians like to focus on the merchant's paintings, his inventory books, his ships. But they forget that you were there too. Every brushstroke made in your presence, every deal drafted with you asleep on the ledger, every visitor greeted or ignored under your supervision. They don't record cats in the ledgers, but you remember. You curl into a small, perfect loaf and close your eyes. The house exhales. The morning comes in quietly, without fanfare, just a softening of the dark and a shift in the smells. From your perch in the merchant's workshop, you notice it first in the wood. Night-silent planks begin to tick and crackle again as warmth creeps in. The floor becomes a living thing under pour. The air loses its damp hush and picks up the faintest tickle of fresh bread, wet cobblestone, and smoke from a chimney relighting itself across the street. Fritzi has wandered off again, likely downstairs to loiter near the oven. She's always known where breakfast appears first. You, however, remain a while longer in the studio. It's an odd, hallowed space. Though nothing grand happens here in this moment. No one is painting, no dramatic commissions underway. It carries the weight of slow human dreams. There's the canvas with the smudged self-portrait the merchant swore he'd fix, but hasn't. A cluster of dried roses tied to a nail in the wall. A half-finished panel with just a dog's paw, painted in vivid detail, and nothing else. You leap down, gracefully of course. The pigment jars clink softly as you pass. Your tail brushes against a hanging apron, dusting it with hair that no amount of brushing will ever remove. Historians still argue whether animals altered the creative rhythms of early modern artists, or simply became part of the furniture, but many great painters had cats. You know this because you've walked across a wet panel or two in your day. One might even say you've contributed. A faint tail smudge in ultramarine. A single whisker embedded in a layer of varnish. Your legacy is layered, subtle, uncredited. You pad down the narrow stairs again, the wood still cool beneath your feet. From the kitchen now wafts something warm and rich, probably oatmeal or pap. Not your favourite, but you're hoping the maid spills something. She usually does. She's there already, bustling about in a sleepy half-focus, Hair still unpinned and apron wrinkled, she hums tunelessly, and you take your post by the warmest leg of the oven. Fritzi is already there, licking her paw and pretending not to care that you're arriving late. The morning routine begins like a play you've seen 100 times. The maid stokes the hearth. Water boils. The merchant's wife descends the stairs wrapped in a shawl, shuffling in slippers and mumbling about the laundry. You watch her with the solemn eyes of someone who's seen her drop at least 2 loaves of bread in the past week. She doesn't notice you until she almost trips over you. Then it's the usual mild scolding, a half-hearted "Jij ondugende kat." You blink slowly in return, which is how cats say, "You're welcome." You slink toward the pantry, where a metal dish waits. It's been refilled, probably by the merchant before sunrise. He's always had a soft spot for you, even if he won't admit it aloud. You eat slowly, savoring each bite like it's part of a ritual. You make the tiniest, crunching noises, the kind that echo like firewood popping. Fritzi joins you, but only after inspecting your bowl to see if yours is better. It's not, but she eats beside you anyway. A rare truce. After breakfast, you resume your patrol. The floor near the back door is slightly damp from melting frost. You lick a paw and wipe your ears with the kind of slow-motion focus that implies world peace depends on your grooming habits. Outside the window, the city stirs in earnest. Carts roll by. Horses clatter. A fishmonger shouts something incomprehensible and impressively rude. Pigeons descend on the bridge like feathery rain. You climb up onto the windowsill and peer out. It's your city, really. Sure, the merchant thinks it's his house. The magistrate thinks it's his square. But only you know the rhythms of this street in its quietest moments. Only you saw the couple kissing behind the butter stall last week. Only you know the boy who feeds crusts to the gulls when no one's watching. You. Silent witness of Delft. Archivist of shadows. You're not just a cat. You're a custodian of small truths. And then, your name. Well, not your real name. Because humans are terrible at naming things. But the name they gave you. Something like Muffatje. A little silly, a little endearing. It's the merchant calling from the hallway. You turn toward the voice, but don't move just yet. It's important to remind him that your cooperation is a gift, not a given. Eventually, you hop down and trot after the sound. He's in the workshop now, sleeves rolled, pipe in hand, staring at the canvas as if it insulted his entire lineage. You leap up to the windowsill again, where the light is best, and sit. You are, after all, his favorite studio ornament. Maybe he'll paint you one day. Maybe he already has, and just didn't say so. Historians still argue whether the famed domestic scenes of the Dutch Golden Age included real pets or just symbolic ones. But as the merchant dips his brush into the ochre and glances your way, there's no question you are very much real and very much part of the art. The morning continues, slow, peaceful, predictable, and you, purring quietly, begin to drift again. Later in the morning, a beam of sunlight catches the floorboards at just the right angle, warm, direct, and irresistible. You rise from the window ledge with a slow stretch, claws extending delicately from your paws like an unfurling fan. You descend to the floor and step into that square of sun like a noble walking onto a stage. The warmth hits your back and settles into your fur with almost comical precision. You give yourself over to it fully, belly to the floor, chin resting, on the wood, paws tucked neatly under like biscuits fresh from the oven. Fritzi watches from the doorway, pretending not to be jealous. She picks a separate sunbeam just out of your line of sight, as if she chose it herself. The house continues, its morning symphony. The maid thumps about upstairs, changing the linens. Down in the hallway, someone is oiling the front door hinges again, clearly a losing battle, as they still squeak with the enthusiasm of a drunk violinist. The merchant mumbles to himself in the studio, likely about light angles and the betrayal of pigments. Historians still argue whether Dutch homes in the 17th century were truly as obsessively clean as paintings suggest, but you can confirm there's a lot of sweeping. So much sweeping. You've been chased off more rugs with a broom than you care to count. The merchant's wife, now dressed and busy with a to-do list of errands, bustles past you in a blur of skirts and intent. She pauses just long enough to glance at you, lying in the sun, sighs, and mutters something under her breath about how the cats do more lounging than the humans. You blink at her. It's not your fault she didn't evolve properly. Outside, the light brightens further, pushing past the chimneys and into the upper windows. The scent of the city has changed again. Less hearth smoke now, more yeast, more movement, more laundry water sloshing in alleyways. There's a scratching sound at the front door. Fritzi hears it too. She lifts her head lazily, then stands. You do the same. That sound is not wind, it's claws. Familiar ones. You both pad down the hallway and sit side by side at the door. The scratching stops. A pause. Then a low, unmistakable murroll from outside. Hendrik. The neighbour's cat has returned, probably from whatever heroic or unsanitary quest took him into the alleyways last night. You paw once at the base of the door, an ancient feline gesture of mild interest. Fritzi snorts softly and walks away. She's clearly over him. Eventually, the merchant opens the door, more for fresh air than for feline diplomacy, and Hendrik struts in like a pirate returning to port. He smells like moss, damp stone, and questionable decisions. He doesn't greet you right away. You respect that. It's part of the dance. He strolls into the kitchen first, brushes past the maid's skirts, and checks his usual bowl. Empty, of course. This is not his house, but he still checks. Then, and only then, does he return to the front room and approach you. You stand, tails brushing once. Then you circle each other. One complete orbit. Mutual sniff. No hissing, no fanfare. Just a reunion between creatures who knew they'd see each other again eventually. Historians still argue whether domestic cats in early modern Europe formed genuine social bonds or simply tolerated each other for mutual benefit. You could tell them the answer, but why spoil the mystery? Together, you and Hendrik stroll toward the back of the house. There's a patch of garden there, just barely fenced off from the alleyway. The door's been left slightly open for air. You slip out, followed by him, the coolness of the brick threshold under your paws. Outside, it's brighter than it looked from the windows. The garden is a mess of tulips, weeds, and kitchen herbs in various states of triumph and surrender. A lone bee buzzes somewhere near the rosemary bush. Hendrik sniffs at a broken flower pot. You pretend not to care. You find your favourite sunspot near the wall and flop down, back to the warm bricks, belly to the sky. Hendrik climbs onto a barrel and perches like a gargoyle, surveying his mini kingdom. Fritzi stays inside, probably planning how to steal someone's chair later. And for a while, time slows. You drift again, this time with the sun soft on your fur and the breeze whispering through the laundry line. You are not quite awake, not quite asleep. Somewhere between purring and dreaming. This is the good part of the day, the warm lull between chores and meals, when nothing demands your attention and no broom is being brandished. The bell of the nearby church tolls the hour, a deep, thoughtful tone that echoes across the canal and fades into the rooftops. You don't count the chimes. That's for the humans. You already know the hour. It's lying on your side with one paw over your nose, a clock. Somewhere between that half-stretched doze and a proper nap, a breeze stirs the air, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of herring. You blink one eye open. Hendrik's already alert, ears perked, tail flicking. But he doesn't move yet either. The scent isn't strong enough to warrant a full pursuit, not without more clues. Eventually, curiosity overrides comfort. And you rise, stretch again, first front legs, then the dramatic rear stretch that makes you look twice your usual length. and hop down from your brick sunbed. Hendrik follows, ever the gentleman rogue. You pad around the side of the garden, slip through a narrow slat in the gate, one you memorized as a kitten, and re-emerge on the cobbled alley. It's midday now. The city is at its noisiest. Boots clatter, wheels rattle. Someone drops a whole crate of something, swears, and then tries to play it off as intentional. You and Hendrik are nearly invisible here, which is how you like it. You walk like shadows, fluid and unremarkable, until you reach the fishmonger's back steps. He's in the middle of unpacking something large and glistening. A cod, maybe. No herring yet, but you're patient. Hendrik lingers just behind a stack of wooden crates, pretending to be inspecting his paw while staying ready to pounce on any edible mistake. The fishmonger's cat, Wilhelmina, a stocky tabby with the attitude of a retired general, emerges from behind a barrel. She sees you both and pauses. Not hostile, just calculating. You blink slowly in greeting. She returns the gesture, but does not offer the same courtesy to Hendrik. He gets a low, warning growl. Still haven't apologized about the eel incident, have you? You seem to say with your silence. Wilhelmina doesn't respond. She doesn't need to. A small piece of fish does fall, finally, gloriously, off the monger's knife. It hits the ground with a soft thwoop, and before it can bounce a second time, Hendrik's already halfway to it. He snags it. Wilhelmina hisses. You sigh. Historians still argue whether the famous fish markets of the Dutch Republic served as social centers or mere commercial hives. What they don't always mention is that cats had their own complicated economy around them, based on scraps, territory, and long-standing grudges. You decide not to get involved in this particular turf war. It's too hot for politics. Instead, you slip away, leaving Hendrik to deal with Wilhelmina's frosty stare. Your exit takes you across a narrow bridge, past the canal with the duck family you like to ignore, and into the shady edge of the cloth dyer's courtyard. This is where the world shifts a little. The air here smells of moss, minerals, and the faint chemical bite of indigo. Cloths in every stage of colour transformation hang on lines above, flapping gently like flags of forgotten kingdoms. The dyer's apprentice sees you, but doesn't try to pet you. He learned that lesson after you swiped his thumb last week. Respect earned. You hop onto a barrel, then up to a windowsill with just enough dust to leave prints. From here, you can see it all, the street below, the gentle chaos of trade, the way people pass one another with distracted familiarity. And here's something odd. The merchant's wife, walking with a small bundle of cloth under her arm, speaking with the baker's apprentice. She laughs at something. You've never heard that particular laugh before. It's brief, warm, and unguarded. You tuck that detail away. As afternoon leans into its softer half, you make your way home. Not in a hurry. There's a kind of ceremony to it. How the cobblestones guide your step. How you know which doorway to leap onto to avoid the wet patch that never dries. Back at the house, Fritzi is lying in the hallway like a dropped scarf. She flicks her ear at your arrival but doesn't. Get up. Inside, the merchant's voice echoes faintly from the studio. Something about layering too soon and unforgivable cracking. It's unclear if he's talking to someone or just to himself. The house smells of linen soap and cooling stew. Evening is approaching. Slowly, like molasses poured across, the rooftops. You curl up in the windowsill again, though the sun has moved on. The light is gentler now, filtered through cloud and curtain. People outside walk a little slower. Doors are closing. Lamps are being lit. You're content. Not just full of fish scraps and dusty sunbeams, but content in the way only an animal, with no pressing obligations, can be. You've done your rounds. You've tolerated your fellow cats. You've watched a tiny piece of history unfold from the safety of a windowsill. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again, with slight variations. You close your eyes. One ear remains half tuned to the world, but the rest of you sinks into stillness. You dream, or something like dreaming, though feline memory does not always divide cleanly between waking life and sleep. Images tumble behind your eyes. a fish slipping from a careless hand, the flick of Fritzy's tail in the hallway, Hendrik poised like a miniature lion against the garden gate. The house creaks gently, and somewhere upstairs, a shutter bangs softly in the breeze. It's late now. The sky has melted into ink, and the merchant's household begins its nightly descent into quiet. The maid extinguishes the hearth with practiced movements. Ashes whisper as they settle into their place for the night. She hums a tune you've heard so many times that even the rhythm makes you drowsy. It's not for you, but you let it soothe you anyway. Downstairs, the merchant himself is still awake. You hear the scrape of a chair, the clink of a glass bottle uncorked, the hesitant sigh of a man debating whether to correct that last brushstroke after all. He doesn't. You know, because the studio door closes with a soft click, not a frustrated thud. Historians still argue whether the famed discipline of Dutch Golden Age painters was exaggerated by later biographers. Whether or not that's true, you can say with confidence, this one rarely finishes what he starts, at least not before supper. Outside, the canal is hushed. Even the waterfowl have gone still. Their usual evening gossip has been replaced by a gentle lapping of water against stone. The city is breathing in its sleep. Fritzy stirs beside you. Somehow, she's appeared on the windowsill without making a sound. You never hear her coming. She settles beside you, not touching, but close. The kind of closeness that says, "For now, this is enough." Below you, a stray dog sniffs around a crate. He's large, shaggy, wearing the battered look of someone who's seen the worst and still believes a good bone might show up anyway. You don't mind him. You've come to an understanding. He watches the night. You rule the window. You both return your gaze to the still canal. Somewhere across the water, another cat answers a call you didn't hear. Then silence again. The night deepens. Inside, the last candle is pinched out. A faint trail of smoke snakes upward, twirls once in the dark, and disappears. The room exhales. Linen rustles as the humans shift in their beds. You stretch once more, not lazily, but thoughtfully, like a ceremony before slumber. Each limb extends in slow sequence. Spine arches, tail flicks, eyes half-lidded, and then you curl. Nose tucked under paw, body folded into a perfect crescent. You become very small, a creature from another century, unaware that someday people will argue over whether you ever really mattered. Of course you did. You mattered in the way that sunbeams matter, or the warmth of a tiled floor at dusk. You were part of the rhythm, an observer, a guardian of crumbs and comfort. Hendrik might return, he might not. The humans will wake again to coffee and mutter Dutch and worries about trade routes and mould. Fritzy will bat something off a table, but now all that is still far away. Now is the hush. Now is the glow after laughter, the sigh after stories. The breath before sleep claims everything. And in this moment, curled in your window, in a city still dreaming of empire, of maps, of paintings, you sleep. Wind down, 300 words. The house is quiet now. The kind of quiet that feels earned, not from emptiness, but from the slow winding down of a day well spent. Somewhere in the distance, a bell chimes once, a soft punctuation mark in the silence. The window stays open just enough to let in the night air. It smells of cool bricks, faint smoke, and water touched by moonlight. The kind of air that makes you slow your breath without thinking. Fritzy shifts slightly beside you, and the two of you sigh in unison, a duet of tiny, sleepy sounds. The city sleeps on. Beyond the canals and rooftops, other cats drift into their own dreams. The merchant stirs once in his bed and doesn't wake. A ship creaks in its mooring. An owl turns her head, watches the alley below, and then tucks it under her wing. And you are still, completely still, safe, warm, and part of a story that no one really writes down, but that's remembered in doorways and windowsills and soft-footed moments like these. So let go now. Let the last of your thoughts float gently out the open window. There's nothing left to chase tonight. The world will be here in the morning. For now, you're simply a sleeping cat in a quiet house, in a quiet city, in a century that's already beginning to fade into memory. Drift deeper. You're home. You're safe. You're asleep. Good night, Serene. That's already beginning to fade into memory. Drift deeper. You're home. You're safe. You're asleep. Good night.